IB Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Thursday, everybody. And you guys know what that means. We're diving into our keys to victory today for when Notre Dame travels down to Fayetteville, Arkansas to take on the Razorbacks for the first time in program history. This is a big game this weekend, so we're going to dive into our overall keys to victory for the team, for the offense, for the defense. Then we're going to dive into our game predictions, talk some game records. And then we're going to talk about the other games going around in college football. This is an exciting and fun slate of games this weekend. Brian, we have a lot coming out today, and I'm excited to dive into everything and get to talking about some football.
Yes. Yeah, can't wait, man. Obviously, we get closer and closer to the game and get more and more anticipation, more and more excitement, more and more nervousness. Honestly, this is a game that I'm a lot more nervous now than I thought I was going to be when the season started. We thought that Arkansas would be a good opponent, and they're going to be a good opponent. Arkansas's kind of who we thought they would be with a little better offense, or actually had kind of a much better offense. But team similar to the team that they are, can they win tough games, big games, that kind of thing? They haven't shown that they can do that yet. And you got to make sure that they don't show that this weekend when you're Notre Dame. But a big moment and a big opportunity, Trev, as we talked about during the week. This is sort of a it's kind of like that the season is on the line kind of thing every week, but I don't feel like every game has the same level of anticipation because not every game has sort of the, this team can beat you kind of thing. And all the frustration that I have about this team so far, Miami and Texas A&M are still probably the two best teams they're going to play this year. At the very least, two of the three best teams that they're going to play this year. And the only other team that I think is on that level is USC, who so far has looked very good, in 4 games. And didn't like their win over Michigan State wasn't pretty, but that actually impressed me because they don't have to be lights out. Everything's going perfectly to have a convincing win. And they had a convincing win. So, you look at those things and say, outside of that, I mean, everybody else is not as good as them. Meaning the two teams that they lost to, and they lost by 1 and 3 points. But that doesn't mean that that's the worst that Notre Dame can play this season either. I mean, we'll kind of see how it goes. So I just feel like if you win this game, all of a sudden your season turns around a little bit. You've got some momentum. You start to build some confidence. I don't think you can win the game without making some changes on defense. Maybe it's enough, maybe it's not enough, but we'll find all those things out. But I'm excited about it, Trevor. I've excited to get down there. It's my first time I'll be at Razorback Stadium, which I'm excited about. I think it's the first time I've actually been in the state of Arkansas. I don't think I've ever driven through Arkansas in my travels. I know that we've driven through like Kansas and Nebraska and places like that, but I don't know that I've actually driven through Arkansas. So I'm excited about that. But big weekend for Notre Dame. Very big weekend, Trev. And I'm excited to kind of make our final predictions and talk game records. And then, man, it's a great weekend of college football. Like, I was kind of annoyed initially that this game was going to be at noon, 11 o'clock Central. But when you look at the rest of the slate, okay, I'll actually be able to watch some games, this weekend. And there's some big games playing. So I'm excited about it. Very excited about it. It'll be a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Back-to-back weekends, we get to watch some Notre Dame football with the sun still up, something that I took for granted after their playoff run and after how they opened the season. So I'm very, very excited. But look, man, at the end of the day, these are the games that you love about college football. These are two programs that have, but each have 2 losses, and strong arguments could be made that Arkansas should have beaten Ole Miss and Memphis, and a very strong argument that Notre Dame should have beaten Miami and Texas A&M. So there's 2 big-name programs going at it for the first time in program history. Both are looking to pick up their first signature win of 2025, and that's what I love about this conversation. Brian, where we're going to start today is the keys to victory for this team as a whole. We'll get into offense and defense here a little bit down the road, but initially there are things that fall under of both sides: offense, defense, special teams, coaches on either side. And Brian, it's simple. It starts with having to be the more physical football team on Saturday.
The reason we're kind of going this direction, Trev, is because as I'm putting the keys together for this game, I'm thinking about these things that are sort of true for both sides of the ball. And I'll list out, different things that I think are important for a game. And when I do that, it's like, okay, I don't like to be repetitive. I don't like to, and repetitive meaning, you don't want to do the same things every week. I mean, you could honestly every single week get into a conversation about, okay, this week's game, the key for this week's game is be good on third down, don't turn over the football, create big play. I mean, you could literally regurgitate the same thing every week if you wanted to. But I don't like doing that, that, and I think because every game is also different, and how every game, is really the focal points are different every game, and I also don't like kind of repeating the same things for both sides of the ball. And so I was like, look, there's some things that I just think translate to both sides, and the first one is what you said, Trev. It's you've got to be the more physical football team in this game. You have to be. Arkansas is big and they're physical. Now, I think Notre Dame has a speed advantage, an athleticism advantage, a talent advantage. But the one thing that can kind of negate all those things is if you just get your butt kicked in the trenches. And this is a game on both sides of the ball that if you get your butts kicked in the trenches, and we'll dive more into this on both sides, but it's going to be hard for you to win this football game if you don't win in the trenches. You can still do it, but it's going to be uglier. It's going to be a little bit more hotly contested. It's going to be come down to the wire in a game that honestly, if Notre Dame plays their game, this is one of those contests, Trev, where I don't think that it should be overly close I'm just being real with you. I don't think it should be like a 4-quarter down to the wire game if you play your game. If you don't play your game, not only will it be a close game, you could lose. And that's what makes this a bit of a challenge for Notre Dame is what will you do as a team? And that's why I say if you're not more physical, you have to at the very least match their physicality. The very least. If you match their physicality, then they can't beat you physically. Now it becomes a game of who schemed better, who executed better, who has better athletes, who has better this, who has better that, right? But if you can win the physicality battle on both sides of the ball, that's how you not only win, but you start winning and winning in an impressive fashion. Because, like, I hate to even bring this up at 1 and 2, I do, but you can't ignore it, and I'd be irresponsible if I ignored it. They still have to play Tennessee. They still have to play Texas A&M. They still have to play LSU. They still have to play Texas, and they have to play Missouri. All 5 teams to some degree, and they already played Ole Miss. So that's 6 teams that could be in the playoff hunt in November against Notre Dame with 2 losses. So you start saying, like, okay, well, Arkansas played those teams, and those teams all beat Arkansas convincingly, but Notre Dame beat them by a last-second field goal. And those things kind of matter. So if you want to do that, you've got to win in the trenches. If you win in the trenches, Trev, I mean, it's never quite this simple, but it is. You win in the trenches, it's going to be much, much harder to lose this football game.
Oh, agreed. I mean, it's going to be a battle on both sides of the ball. And at the end of the day, we've seen flashes of physicality from both the offensive and defensive lines, but we haven't seen a consistent game where they've just came out and taken it to the opposing team in both trenches. And that's something that's going to be absolutely huge in this matchup. There's no way around it. At the bare minimum, we could talk Notre Dame has a talent advantage, and they don't have a Leonard Moore. They don't have a Jeremiah Love. That's fine. Notre Dame doesn't have a 6'5", 387-pound interior defensive tackle either. So it can go either way when we break down who has what. But at the end of the day, you're taking X's and O's out of it. You're taking what scheme, what man versus zone, and you can do pre-snap motion, and it doesn't matter. Because if you get dominated in the trenches, none of that stuff is going to matter anyway. So absolutely love that being the first key. But then that does kind of follow up into our second key, Brian, for the team, and it's be the aggressor on offense and defense. Take the fight to Arkansas. And I think that means even more with it being on the road. You're going down for the first time ever playing in that stadium. Back is against the wall. You have to play like you have nothing to lose. And so far, even especially defensively, that unit is played like they have a lot to lose. Almost every time they go out onto the field, it's very passive. Offensively, take the fight to them. You have to game plan to put as many points on the board as possible, because we can sit here and talk about, well, if the defense could do this and maybe it'll look like this and then play this guy, it'd be great. But until they prove that, the offense is also going to have to be the aggressor in this game.
There's no doubt, Trev. I think both sides of the ball, you have to take it to them. I think this team as a whole just doesn't have that same just in your face, we're going to come and really try to beat you and beat you bad that I think top teams need to have. And top Notre Dame teams in the past have had, where you don't belong in the field with us and we're going to show you why. And it starts, I mean, it's I don't know that that's even necessarily a player thing. I think part of it is this isn't as confident of a team as we've seen in the past. Defensively, I think this offensive team is a very confident football team. They've become more confident. And, you watch what they, you watch how CJ Carr handles himself down 2 scores in the second half against Miami, and he's out there, playing. He makes mistakes. And what does he do after he throws the pick where the game could be over? He leads them to 10 straight points on their next 2 possessions. They're about, Texas A&M ties the game up 34-34, fourth quarter at your home stadium. This is your home opener. What's he going to do in front of the home crowd? Leads Notre Dame right down the field and score a touchdown. He's confident in the players around him. The players around him are confident in him. There's confidence in the running backs. There's confidence in the receivers. I'm not as incredibly confident in the offensive line, but Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price played the last 2 games like they're confident in the offensive line, and that's what matters. It doesn't matter that I don't have confidence in him. CJ Carr, you say, well, he should have known this. He dropped back like he was confident that Anthony Knapp was going to have his backside, and you hope that doesn't go away, because that means Anthony Knapp does the job he needs to do. But you got to let those guys play confidently, though. You come out in this game and I was fired up that Marcus Freeman allowed them to come out and be aggressive against Purdue. That was great. Now keep doing that. Don't now pull the reins back in against maybe a tougher opponent. Like, Arkansas can score, so let's just play ball control and all that. Now that's how you lose the momentum you're building. And then on the other side of the ball, you got to be the aggressor as well. You've allowed your first 3 opponents to dictate to you what's going to happen, and that's got to change. And so it's true on, and same thing on special teams, right? I mean, just, don't, if you see something, go after it. And that's the one thing that the last 2 years we've seen, even this season, that Marty Biaggi's going to get a lot of free reign in big moments to go after stuff. I mean, well-designed kick block early on against Texas A&M. Kick return game's been big so far this year. We know what they did in the postseason last year. So it's all phases. Be the aggressor. Take the fight to Arkansas in every single phase of the game, which also, as we talked about, ties into number 1. If you do, we should have actually done that first. And then what's a key to being the aggressor? Being the more physical football team. It's hard to be more physical if the game plan, the scheme, and the coaching going into the game doesn't require you or doesn't demand that you play an aggressive downhill style. Read and react makes it really hard for college kids to play a physical football game. And so those are all going to be keys.
Next couple of keys that we have here for the team, Brian, are a little bit more X's and O's based, not so much identity and culturally based. But look, at the end of the day, Notre Dame has to win the turnover battle, especially when you're on the road with this high-powered of an offense. On offense, you got to take care of the football. Defense, you have to attack the ball and make plays on it when you're given the opportunity. I think Purdue's the first game this year that they won the turnover battle. I think they won it, 2-1, I believe?
2-1, yeah.
Yeah. So Notre Dame's going to have to find a way on the road to win the turnover battle, because that was something they had a lot of success in last year.
I mean, they didn't turn it over a ton last year, Trev, and they dominated when it came to forcing turnovers. Yeah. Now, it did take them a little bit last year to kind of get going from a forced fumble standpoint, but they were still picking passes off early in the season. But, you look at last season, Trev, they lost the turnover battle twice last season, Northern Illinois and Penn State. And the Penn State game caused a game that Notre Dame, I felt, was on the verge of steamrolling Penn State in the second half. All of a sudden, they get the momentum back, and now it's a dogfight to the end of the game. And, you point to 2025, they lost it by 2 to Miami, lost by 3 points, tied against Texas A&M. But I would also call, the muff PAT is kind of similar to a turnover because it takes points off the board. And then you won it by 1 against Purdue. You've got to get back to being a team that forces turnovers And look, I can live with a turnover a game. I can live with that if you're playing an aggressive style, but that means your defense has to match its aggressiveness and be a team that forces more turnovers. Do that on the road, it's a lot easier to win. There's no doubt about that.
Last thing, Brian, Notre Dame last season was exceptional in the middle eight. And this year, for lack of a better word, they've gotten dominated in the middle eight. They've gotten outscored 31-14. They lost the middle eight to Miami 14-0. They lost the middle eight to Texas A&M 7-0. And Purdue put up 10 points to end the first half, all inside of the final 4 minutes of the first half. You know, and the first points that Notre Dame scored in the middle eight was a 100-yard kick return by Jadarian Price. So it's not like they drove down the field. Now, we can have conversation of would we have been confident that they would have? Yeah, but I was also confident on their fifth drive of the game that they were going to drive down the field and put up points with 1:46 left, and it was a one-play strip sack. So you just never know how everything is going to pan out. But the first time Notre Dame scored in the middle eight, it took a 100-yard kick return by Jadarian Price to put points on the board. This is a game that Notre Dame has to win. And it's crazy as this sounds, Brian, 31 of those points that they've allowed, 24 of them have came in the end of the first half. Notre Dame has struggled to close going into halftime. There's not a game that they've gone into halftime with momentum. And that's something that just absolutely has to change, especially when you're on the road. We said in the Miami game, you give this crowd a reason to still be in it. End of the second quarter, coming into the third quarter, they're going to be raucous the rest of the game. You know, you need reasons for Notre Dame's home crowd to still be in it. Go into halftime with a little bit of momentum. Give up a touchdown at the end of the half. Even with Purdue, you get a 100-yard kick return for a touchdown, and you just couldn't let Purdue score. It took them 53 seconds, 6 plays to go 75 yards and throw a touchdown pass. Notre Dame has to find a way to win the middle eight with a heavy emphasis on closing the first half strong, especially when they're on the road, man. It's going to be huge.
I mean, honestly, Trevor, when you look at it, the frustrating thing is if they would have just stopped Miami and A&M and just held them to field goals on their final drives of the second quarter, Notre Dame is 3-0 right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can give up scores, just hold them to field goals.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that's the frustrating part for me is that, you know, I mean, A&M scored 2 touchdowns in the last 5.5 minutes of the second quarter. I mean, so that even right outside the middle eight, but you know, you give up that field goal or give up that touchdown instead of a touchdown with a minute 11 left, and then you go down and you give up a sack in a situation. You know, your offense goes down, and CJ completes a big ball down the field. You got the ball in their territory with time left. You need a first down and you're in field goal territory. You've got a shot to score. I mean, you're inside the 50 with less than a minute left. I don't care if you have timeouts or not. You're in scoring territory, especially with the weapons Notre Dame has. And they give up a sack and they get nothing. And then, of course, you allow Miami to go on a over 5-minute drive that basically eat up the whole – literally the only play – the only snap that Notre Dame took in the middle eight on offense against Miami was taking a knee. They didn't even have the ball in the middle eight. Like that is one of those things where it's like, this is more of a defensive thing, but then offensively, your one opportunity to do something in a contested game in the middle eight, and you give up a big sack and turn it over on downs, and it becomes just a disaster possession.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even against Texas A&M at the end of the first half, you have the weird, you know, the frustrated clap. You get the errant snap, and then Texas A&M gets the ball back close to the 50-yard line. They run a couple plays, they're in field goal range. Now, luckily, they missed. But you can't count on that every single time, you know, so that stuff has to get cleaned up as well. So it's, you know, it's one of those things where the middle eight hasn't been too kind for Notre Dame this season, and it's one that absolutely has to turn around. And, again, can't emphasize this enough, especially on the road. Especially on the road, because we've seen what happened in week 1 when they didn't.
I'll tell you another thing on the road that's important, Trev, is your special teams can't hurt you. Look, it's always good when your special teams can step up and help you. That's always a plus. I love that. I love when the special teams can step up and make plays and do things for you. But at the end of the day, what you can't do on the road is cost you points. And for the most part, the special teams has done its job this year when it comes to doing no harm. I mean, we haven't had any turnovers on special teams. They haven't had any kicks blocked. But don't think they've missed a field. Have they missed a field goal? Am I drawing a blank on them missing a field goal? I don't remember them missing a field goal.
Or just in entirety. They missed one against Purdue, but it was late.
Yeah, and that was the backup place kicker. That's right. They did miss that one when it was 56-23. So yes, that's a good point. But they haven't missed a meaningful game. They haven't had a punt blocked. James Rendell has been outstanding so far this season in limited opportunities. Well, limited because of the Purdue game. He had plenty of opportunities the first two games. And I think he's been really good. So you've got the kick return for a touchdown. You had even earlier in the game, you had a big kick return that gave you possession. Jadarian Price, was it A&M or Miami? He had another return that got you the ball out past the 30. I think it was it's been a crazy few weeks.
I think it was A&M.
That's what I thought. And so your special teams has been good so far. You have to continue that. You can't let a kick get blocked. I mean, of course, you also have the punt block for a touchdown against Texas A&M. So it's been a good start to the season for the special teams, with one big exception. You've got to make sure that this game is clean. And if you can provide big plays, great. But my standard for do your job for special teams is don't make mistakes. Catch, kick, tackle. That's the big key for me on special teams.
Agreed.
So those are some of the team type of things. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I was going to say, special teams wise, be who you were against Miami and Purdue, and put some of the stuff behind you in the past from what you did against Texas A&M. You had the botched hold. You did give up a kick return for a touchdown that did get called back for a hold, but that was still, that was one of them.
I get it, but the kick return went right where the guy got tackled, in the hold, and they did have a blocked punt for a touchdown in that game, though.
They did.
So, but to your point, you got to be clean. You got to be clean on special teams in this game.
Well, what we know, man, is this has the makings of a high-scoring game, and it's going to be one that hopefully when we dive into the keys won't be as high-scoring. Right now on FanDuel, the over-under for the points for Arkansas is 29.5. So they're expecting them to score around 30, which I think is going to be pretty interesting. But nonetheless, we are in for a high-powered matchup. Hopefully they can knock out some of these overall team keys to victory, Brian. But that's going to do it for part one of today's show. But don't go anywhere. We are getting ready to dive into the keys to victory on offense. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. And then, as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part two of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we're diving into the keys to victory, but for the Notre Dame offense. And this has been the side of the ball that has kind of been the shimmering light. And I don't want to use the word surprise because we spent a lot of the offseason talking about, hey, they got C.J. Carr, best running back field in the country, we believe, a very underrated, group of wide receivers and tight ends and pass catchers. So I'm not surprised that they're playing this well. I'm a little surprised that they're playing this well this early in the season. And that's a little bit of a surprise. But look, man, when we talk keys to victory on the road, got to start fast. Notre Dame's offense has to start fast, and they did that against Purdue.
Oh, goodness gracious. I mean, it was one of their better start fast games in a while. I mean, just really couldn't be stopped to start that game. It wasn't until their fifth possession that they got stopped, and that was a big stop because they fumbled the ball and gave the other team short field, and they got a field goal out of it. So you have not been great in the we talked about win the turnover battle in part one. We should have mentioned Notre Dame's points off turnovers mark this year is not good. I mean, they're losing the points off turnover battle, and I would be willing to bet you that they're losing the points off turnovers battle bigger than they've lost their first two games. I'll bet you the margin in that, and that's just I haven't looked that up, but I'm willing to bet that that's the case. So obviously that's been a problem, but your offense is done well so far. You were okay with your early start against Texas A&M. I mean, look, you put 17 points on the board, offensive points on the board in the first half against A&M. That's not bad. Obviously, you didn't get points in your first drive, but I mean, they gave the team a 17-7 lead with some help from the special teams, and A&M comes back and makes it 14-10, and the offense, it was 17-14, excuse me. And then your offense goes down and scores again and answers with another touchdown. And you're thinking 24-14, like, hey, this is pretty good. And then, of course, A&M goes down and gets the 2 touchdowns. And then in part because of your own turnover that gave A&M a short field and allowed them to get a score. So you're starting fast is going to be huge. Again, confidence in yourself. It's a lot of the same reasons we've talked about before. You've got to continue building confidence. When the other side of the ball is struggling, which this defense is struggling mightily, and your side of the ball, which has been good so far, struggles in a game, that can cause you to press, and it can put pressure on the other, even more pressure on the other side of the ball that's already struggling. So the biggest key, Trev, is you've got to build up confidence in yourselves and continue with the confidence you've been building on offense. But then it also, I think, gives your defense pressure like, hey, guys, our offense came to play today. Let's just relax. Let's go play ball. Let's do our jobs, and we'll be okay. As opposed to, crap, the offense isn't playing well. Now there's even more pressure on us to step up and make plays and make stops. And that can last year's defense, I'm not worried about that. Last year's defense did that every week. This year's defense, it concerns me. So that's number one. And then number 2, Trev, I don't care if it's 11 o'clock, and I don't care that they're not going to be allowed to tailgate for 8-9 hours. This is still Notre Dame. And this is the Arkansas fans are going to be fired up for this game. It's going to be packed. It's going to be loud. And early in the game, if you're coming out there and you're not moving the ball and you're just playing, boring offense and, let's control the clock, and that's because I don't think that's who this team is. You can run the ball all you want. I don't care, but you're a big play attacking offense. That's who you need to be. And if you come out and you're not that, and you're selling for field goals, or you're not putting the ball in the end zone, or you're turning it over, or you're punting, that's going to get this Arkansas team more and more fired up. And it's going to get this Arkansas crowd more and more fired up, Trev, and they just can't allow that to happen.
No, I mean, the concerns that you had last week around Marcus Freeman letting the offense go be the offense, I have those concerns this week because I'm concerned that his defensive mindset and the philosophy is, okay, this is a very high-powered offense. I know he knows the defense is struggling. One of the things that you do, just very elementary big pictures, okay, well, it's hard for them to score points if they're not on the field. But this offense isn't built to go on 13, 14, 15 play drives that eat up 7 minutes a clock. I mean, can they? Yeah. Will they have that type of success against a big physical Arkansas defensive front? Maybe. But I'm not willing to bet on that, Brian. To your point, you got to find different ways to push the tempo. You got to find ways to still take your shots downfield. Because Marcus Freeman's other philosophy is as long as the offense scores one more point than what the defense allows, then they're going to be sitting in a good spot. That's something he said earlier this week in a press conference. And so this offense is going to have to find a way to stay in rhythm. And we've seen this year that when they do find tempo, when they do get into a rhythm, they are extremely difficult to stop. And that's not just about Purdue. You throw an interception, then you lead back-to-back scoring drives against Miami. The offense looked really good against Texas A&M in moments, streaky moments, but they were able to piece a couple of drives together. And then, unfortunately for them, it's sometimes when it rains, it pours, that type of thing, where, you start to stack 3 and outs. But this offense is going to have to find a way to push the tempo. They got to be consistent. You got to wear Arkansas down. Use what you have to your advantage. I said earlier, you don't have a 387-pounder. Make that the advantage. Mm-hmm. Make them substitute. Put them in a position where it's difficult to substitute. Push the tempo. Get the ball to the perimeter. There's a lot of different things they could do in this one, man. A lot of different things.
Yeah, and some of those things I'll kind of, will be part of our keys also. But like the other thing about starting fast too, Trevor, is I feel like teams like Arkansas, 2 losses in a row, devastating losses, self-inflicted wounds at the end of both games, just that were crushing. Kind of been a really streaky team in the past. They're going to go one or two ways, and I think like the first quarter is going to decide that. First quarter and a half is going to decide that. Either A, you come out and you're just boom, 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 3 possessions, 3 scores, they fold, blowout win. Or 3 and out or punt, you hold them to a next drive, field goal, Next drive turnover. Next thing you know, this team is now super confident, and they are the ones that are now getting hot. And now you're behind the 8 ball. The other part of starting fast, too, is you have to at least be prepared that your defense is still going to continue to struggle, and you've got to be prepared to match score for score until the defense can figure it out. You can't fall behind in a game like this. You can't. Because Arkansas is capable. They're not exactly a ground and pound team. They can run the ball, but they're a big play team as well. With their size on the offensive line and running back, they can run the clock if they need to, if your defense is struggling. Now all of a sudden you're down 14 points and then they take up 6-7 minutes. It's not out of the realm of possibility, Trevor, that Notre Dame is going to give up a long scoring drive. Why do I say that? Because that's what we have already seen this season from them. A&M had a 5-minute scoring drive that resulted in a field goal. A&M had another 5-minute scoring drive or 4-minute scoring drive that resulted in a touchdown. But I'm even more so thinking about the Miami game, where Miami had back-to-back scoring drives. One went 5:09. The very next one went 7.5. And so we've seen teams do this to Notre Dame before. And we got to make sure that that's not what happens in this game. So the more you can score early, the more your defense has time to figure stuff out. So you have to at least have that mindset of we've got to be prepared to win in a shootout. And if it doesn't happen that way, then you still keep rolling, and then the defense is great, and they can pin the ears back, and you can go after it. So I think it's another key to this, the fast start for Notre Dame.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I mean, it's like we talk about every week, start fast and stay fast. I won't dive into the numbers of what they did last year in first possessions, but at the end of the day, we've seen this Notre Dame team before come out and score in the opening drives more times than not, and then they follow that up with a 3-and-out or a turnover.
Mm-hmm.
If you give Arkansas the feeling that they're still in this and they can still hang around and still be in this game, especially when you're on the road, they can jump all over you, man. They can absolutely jump all over you. I know we touched on it a little bit, Brian, already, but the next key to victory that we had was push the tempo, attack, and wear Arkansas's defense down. That's something that they're going to have to do a good job of on Saturday.
This is a big team on defense, Trev. They're big boys in the D-line. We talked about that. And my concern is if you slow the game down, huddle all the time, you're snapping the ball with less than 10 seconds left all the time, you're lining up, you're just letting them get lined up, you're not really doing a whole lot pre-snap, this team is going to be like, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to play ball. You watch them against Ole Miss, you watch them against Memphis, you go back to last year and watch games from last year. I'm watching the Texas Tech game from last year. Early on, Texas Tech was struggling to move the ball and score against Arkansas. I think it was like 21-3 at one point in time. Texas Tech ended up winning like 39-26 because you could see it in the middle of the second quarter because Texas Tech kept pushing and kept going at them and spreading them out and going at them. That it got to a point where those big old linemen were just like, they were gassed. I mean, they were just hands on shoulders. They were standing up at the line at the snap and just kind of letting themselves get blocked. They were gassed. And that can be the case with a lot of these guys. So I want to see them be aggressive, push the tempo, get these linemen chasing. And we've got our next 2 points will kind of play into this a little bit of specifically how you can do this. But you've got to be able to wear this team down. We saw something similar. I'm actually going to pull up the box score of this game. But I remember watching the Arkansas, and it was a little bit of a different personnel, but Arkansas was still big at this point in time. And I remember watching the game where LSU played them in 2023, the last time Mike Denbrock was down there or played them. So 23 was in LSU, but Arkansas was up 13-10 at halftime, but they were up 13-3. LSU scores on a big touchdown pass with less than a minute left in the second quarter to make it 13-10. But you could see Arkansas late in the second quarter starting to wear down, starting to get tired, starting to start missing more tackles, missing more run fits. And you go back and watch the second half of that game, and LSU started running the ball up the middle. Logan Diggs had a huge run against them. Josh Williams came in and had a big run against them. Logan had one. And you're just running right at him. And first half, they had like very little running room against Arkansas. Second half, all of a sudden, these holes are opening up and they're gassing them. Why? Those boys were worn down. They were tired from just the pace of the game that LSU was going at them and just throwing the ball down the field and getting 20-yard runs and having to run 20 yards and get lined up and then go right at it again. So I think that's something that Notre Dame needs to take a lesson from. You know what a 387-pound kid and a 323-pound kid and a 315-pound kid don't want to do? Play 50 snaps or play fast. You start doing that, you get them on their heels. Now you can run the ball right at them. So I think I don't think shortening the game is good for Notre Dame in this game. I think extending the game and making them play more snaps on defense is exactly how you wear this football team down. And that's the difference between, them being fresh in the fourth quarter of a close game and you pulling away in the second half of this game. So I absolutely want to see Notre Dame be very physical in this game and get after it in this game and say, hey, we're the better football team. We're the better athletes, and we're better conditioned. Those are things that I want to see from Notre Dame in this game.
I mean, we watched teams try to go right at this Arkansas team last year and fail to do so and not try to stretch it to the perimeter and take advantage of matchups on the outside. Prime example is when Arkansas played Tennessee at home. Tennessee last year with Nico at quarterback, they had Dylan Sampson as their running back, who I believe was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year last year. I mean, you go and you think about what they tried to do in that game. And they tried to play Arkansas straight up. They didn't try to get the ball to the perimeter to score wide, or, they didn't utilize Nico in the pass game. He averaged 5.4 yards a pass against Arkansas. And they averaged 4.8 rushing yards as a team. What happened, Brian? Tennessee lost 19-14. When you play that style of game, the game that Arkansas's defense wants you to play, and you try to go at their size, that's when they have the advantage. But if you start pushing the ball to the perimeter, yes, they have an offense that can keep them around games to where it won't look, 41-20. That's why their final score against Ole Miss was 41-34. That's why Ole Miss was 32-31 or whatever it was. I mean, you have the offense to do it, but you have to take advantage of those matchups on defense. I agree completely. So then, Brian, we get into the conversation, how does Notre Dame do that? And our third key to victory is to be able to spread them out in the run game and in the pass game. Got to be able to take advantage of those matchups.
Absolutely. It gets back to it. It goes in line with what we were just talking about. This is a bigger defense. It's also a defense that's not overly disciplined. The more you spread them out, the more you open up run lanes for your speed, the more that you make them have to chase, the more that you have to force them to fit in space where it's not lineman, linebacker, safety stacked on top of each other, but it's lineman here, linebacker out there, safety way back there, because you're spreading them out and you're going with some pace. So I think there's plenty of things that Notre Dame can do to line up and go at them. And that doesn't mean you go 10, 11 personnel all game. You could go 12 personnel. There's different things you can do and maybe bunch them up and then get the ball outside, because spread them out isn't just about lining up with spread alignments. Spreading them out is also how you attack them. It means force them to chase to the perimeter, force them to defend you vertically, force them to say, hey, look, you want to go 12 personnel and get your box real tight, then we'll run a jet sweep or we'll run a reverse or we'll do something where we're going to get the ball outside and get those guys chasing, because those linemen are going to look good chasing down screens maybe early in the game. But I'd like to see Cameron Ball after 40 snaps try to chase down Jeremiah Love in space in the third and fourth quarter. But if you're only on snap 31 because you're in the slow the clock down, limit possessions type of game, I've always felt limiting possessions and slowing the game down simply means instead of losing 44-41, you're going to lose 24-21. That's all. To me, that's all that means. You're still going to lose. You're just going to lose in a lower scoring game. If your defense can't make stops, that just means they have fewer stops that they're going to, not make. It doesn't mean that's going to be the secret recipe of your defense all of a sudden being good, because it's not like Notre Dame lacks depth. You only slow the game down when you're just, dude, we're down to 5 linemen, and we don't have the depth to, we need to take a breather. No, you got plenty of linemen to rotate. Offense scores in 3 plays and you just got off the field after 10-play drive. Rotate your next talented group of players in. Oh, gee, I guess you're going to have to put Kingston, Viliama, Austin, Madden, Faremo in at linebacker since Drake and Jaden Osbury played the whole series. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you're fine. Or the other way around. Kingston was on the field the last drive. Okay, that's not the point. The point is, this isn't a game that you ground and pound it. This is a game that you have the speed advantage, the athleticism advantage. Use it to your advantage in this game. And that's certainly what I want to see is spread them out, Formationally, spread them with motions, spread them out with how you attack them. Marcus Freeman said day he was hired offensively, he wants to attack vertically and for width. Make them to defend the width of the field and the length of the field offensively. That's going to be very important in this football game. And teams that have done that to Arkansas the last couple of years have had a lot of success. It doesn't always start early, but eventually they start making mistakes. They miss tackles. They have bad fits. They have blown assignments, and all of a sudden somebody's running wide open. And Ole Miss did that to them. Memphis did that to them. It happened to them a lot last year. And you're just like, dude, where were you on that? That's Arkansas. That's who they are. But if you try to slow it down, go 12 personnel, ground and pound it, you're playing right into their hands. And I don't think Notre Dame's going to do that. I'll be surprised if Notre Dame. I always have that fear with a defensive head coach, and I definitely had that last week. But you need to use your advantage and speed and go at them. It just it ties into the overall, like we talked about, the aggressive nature that this football team needs.
One of the ways that they're going to be able to do that, Brian, is our fourth key to victory. Notre Dame is going to have to do some things to mix up the run game, work Arkansas's defense inside and out. And that was something that, we talked about diversity in the run game last week when they were getting ready to face Purdue. That's another thing that I'm hoping to see from this offense again. I hope Mike Denbrock is very intentional about switching up, inside zone, mid zone, duos, counters, counter trays. That was a thing of beauty to watch on Saturday against Purdue.
It was.
You're going to have to find different ways to attack this Arkansas defensive front. You can't just expect Notre Dame to run inside zone, duo the entire game.
Right. Well, that would be even more foolish because you're running right downhill at a big boys that want you to run right downhill. Mid zone's been their bread and butter play this year. Run it. It's great. It's a great play against a team like this. But it can't be the only play you run, it was predominantly that way against A&M. It's like you said, Trev, we saw mid-zone, we saw inside zone, which the difference between mid-zone and inside zone, the way Notre Dame runs it, is mid-zone is kind of a stretch type of play. You're attacking the inside hip of the tackle. Inside zone is a downhill and cut back run. It is a physical run. It can be very difficult to tell the difference between Notre Dame's inside zone and their duo play. They attack you very similarly. Reads are a little different. There's some slight footwork differences, but it's used in very many ways the same way. And the difference, Notre Dame will call it differently depending on kind of what the defense is doing. If you're getting more of a base look, a lot of times they'll do more inside zone. If you're getting a team that does a lot of movement, they'll maybe do more duo. But you run those things, run your counter, have some gap schemes, because against a team like this, you're not always just going to double team and move them off the line. Sometimes you just got to pin that guy inside and get outside of them. And that's what gap schemes are designed to do. That's what your kick play does. That's what your counter plays do. That's what a buck sweep does. Where you're like, look, we're having trouble moving this guy off the line early in the game, so let's just down block on him and then get somebody out moving in space. Run your counters, run an outside zone. Use your jets and motions not just to get there, to mess up the eye discipline, but if those linebackers aren't reacting to it, and I don't know why anyone would react to Notre Dame's motions right now because they don't do anything with their motions. They've thrown to their motions a couple times, but they don't hand off to it. They don't really throw to it that much. This is the game maybe start to do that a little bit and get them thinking, oh, shoot, I got to go this way. And then next time you fake that handoff and then Jeremiah's on a little counter step or Jadarian's on a little counter step backside and the linebackers are going this way while your blockers are going this way. Right now, they can just key your linemen. Just key your offensive line. They don't have to worry about the motions and stuff. So I'd like to see some of that stuff as well. But that's where that run game variety comes from, Trev. And it is an inside-out attack. Inside is still inside zone, duo, and mid zone are still that's your babies. And then counter, but then also having some stuff on the perimeter, outside zone, maybe a toss. I don't know that I love toss. People love toss. I don't know that I love that this game because they do have bigger, better tackling secondary players that can fill and but you can do some stuff with jets and some perimeter stuff, some perimeter screens where I do think you can get outside of them. And so I like that inside out approach, but just give their linebackers different things to worry about. And, I think that if it's as well designed as it was last week, I think this offense can run the ball on Arkansas. So not everybody that's only watched them play their most recent game. Well, Memphis ran for 290 on them. Notre Dame should run all over them, as we explained yesterday. So far this season, that's their anomaly. And they only had a couple games like that last year. They shut down Ole Miss's run game, and Ole Miss has run the ball for over 200 yards well over 200 yards on everybody else they've played. And so they went for $118 against Arkansas. That's not normally what this offense does, but Notre Dame can run the ball on them. It's just going to be different than what Memphis did, because Memphis had a very dynamic quarterback who rushed for over 100 yards. So you could run the jets with the read zone where he was going to run or hand off the jet, or he was going to keep it, or an outside zone read where he would hand it off or keep it, or read zone where he's going to pull and get out the backside. You're not really doing that with Notre Dame. You can. CJ can move the chains that way, but it's not something that you're going to be like, dude, if you're pulling it and having CJ Carr run on the perimeter and not giving to Jeremiah Love, that's a win for us as a defense.
Yeah.
Like, fine. Let CJ Carr keep pulling it and see how that goes for you. You know, so it's a different type of attack, and you're going to have some answers. And Arkansas, I promise you, will crash the backside of your offensive line. You have to have some answers for that as well. That's the one thing that I'm not concerned about. I want to just see how Notre Dame handles that in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, FanDuel thinks that they're going to be able to run the football relatively well on Arkansas's defense. Right now, Jeremiah Love's over-under, his rushing yards is set at 97.5. Jadarian Price's over-under is set at 56.5. So they think they'll combine for right around a little over 150 yards. You know, I think the over-under, their total is like 153.5, I think, 152.5. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they're able to fare in the run game against this Arkansas defense. But, Brian, our last key to victory, we're going out to the perimeter and talking pass game. Notre Dame has to be able to create ISOs in the pass game and take advantage of your matchups when a safety's matched up on Eli Raridan or Malachi Fields against Julian Neal. Those are going to be two matchups that are going to be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, you talked about those yesterday, Trev, as well. You talked about Eli. You talked about getting Jaden Greathouse matched up against their safeties and linebackers. There are things you can do formationally and especially with motions that I think you can kind of dictate their coverage to them, that if you move in certain ways, they're going to roll to certain coverages that I think are going to work for you. I want to see Notre Dame be creative in that way, use their formations, use their motions to try to ISO certain guys. I also think, and you mentioned this yesterday as well, Trevor, I think it's a great point, and I'll build on it here, is there's definitely some things you can do with your tight ends and your running backs in ISOs as well. And so what I mean by ISOs is if you're able to line up certain ways or run certain post-snap switches, or, you know, like even something as simple as like a reduced alignment by the tight end or by your boundary receiver, and a trips to the field where, you know, maybe you put Eli Raridan backside and you force them to kind of say, we're going to overreact to go over here and play over here. And then you've got Eli Raridan running a corner route on a safety if they're going to go corners over. If they're not going to go corners over, then guess what you have to the trip side with Malachi Greathouse and Jordan Faison to that side is you've got a safety and a linebacker now involved in coverage responsibility. So like, that's an example of things that you can do formation-wise that puts them in some binds personnel-wise. Say, what are you going to do? So then let's say they put corners over and they keep a safety or a linebacker backside on Raridan. Now all of a sudden you're running some kind of combination where your 6'7", 4'5" tight end is running something, and you've got Jeremiah Love running some kind of wheel route, trail route, philo route, angle route, something backside as well, where now you've got some great ISO opportunities backside. Or you can go in a motion and you can get Jaden Greathouse in a certain ISO against somebody. Or, you know, you could have situations where I'm going to put Faison or Greathouse backside, and I'm going to put Malachi Fields front side, and I'm going to have him be my guy that runs a slot fade because I think we can get in a matchup there that we like. Whatever the case may be, Trev, there's a lot of things Notre Dame can do formationally, with motions, with alignments, and with play calls, especially with some post-snap switch stuff against a very undisciplined defense, things where you've got to get them to make decisions and communicate. No, you got that guy, I got this guy. That's how people get turned loose. And I think Mike Denbrock's done a pretty good job of that this season. Like, I remember at one point in time last year, somebody asked, why aren't our offensive linemen or why aren't our receivers ever running wide open like other teams have all the time when they watch college football? Well, number one, because you just watch highlights. And so obviously you're going to see those plays on highlights. But number two is, I don't know that Notre Dame did a lot of those things. We were always begging to do some post-snap switch stuff. And then sometimes they would create some of those opportunities. And then there's a couple other times when they had a play like that, like against Purdue, and your offensive tackle gets launched into your quarterback before he can throw the ball, and you don't see that opportunity. But I mean, you look at games this year. I mean, Eli Raridon coming open down the field. You think of, Malachi beating a guy on a post route, ISO. He's one-on-one with a post route. CJ talked about his read. He goes, once I saw that it was one-on-one, I knew we had it. You think of, twice against A&M, you had a running back running up the sideline, for a potential big play. Second time was even more open than the first time. Like, you're worried sometimes as a coach when you call a play and they didn't cover it well. You're like, man, they're going to adjust. And then they ran it again, which I loved for Mike Denbrock. And then this time A&M covered it even worse than they did the first time. And it goes for a touchdown. And then you had the play also in that game where Raridon kind of runs the delay wheel route. He's wide open for a big play. Mike Denbrock's done a pretty good job so far this season of doing things that are designing opportunities to get his guys in space. And I definitely want to see more of that in this game. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Throwback screens, wheel routes, trail routes, angle routes from Jeremiah Love. I would love to see Notre Dame do something with they kind of spread them out a little bit, maybe put Raridon into the boundary, go 3 receivers to the field. That way you get them to overreact, and that way you're almost guaranteeing a Jeremiah Love ISO to that side. Just have him run an angle route where it looks like he's going to run a slide and then come back in. Man, you got a one-on-one. That could be money. I could even see something like a seam route from one of your running backs, just delay, go right down the middle of the field, something like that comes wide. I mean, there's so many things you can do to this defensive structure to create those opportunities if A, you can design it well, and if B, you can protect it. And that's going to be a big key, is some of that stuff requires an extra second to hang on to the football. And then the final piece too, Trev, when you talk about creating ISOs, it's also there comes a point in time where CJ Carr's got to be like, I'm reading the one-on-one correctly. Because sometimes you may think you get a one-on-one and you just drop back, lock in, and throw the ball down the field, and you don't see that safety coming over and he picks it off. Correctly read it, but then he's just got to be willing to throw it. And to everyone, not just Malachi Fields, but to everyone. Jaden Greathouse is in a one-on-one. Don't wait till the semifinals to learn that that's uncovered with Jaden Greathouse, and then Jaden's got to make those catches. And he's got to make sure he doesn't get too frustrated with what's happened so far that when those times come, he goes and makes plays. So there's a lot of aspects of it, Trev, but that's going to be a big key. Very big key is when those opportunities come in those one-on-ones, whether it's Fields, Raridon, Love, Price, Greathouse, Faison, Malachi, or Micah Gilbert, maybe it's a KK Smith. I don't really care who it is. Ty Washington. When those times come, you got to make the right read and get the ball out there, and you got to make the catches. But those opportunities, in my opinion, will be there in this game if you have the proper game plan, which I think Mike Denbrock will do. And he certainly did the last time he played this team.
Yeah, well, absolutely. All that has to be in place. CJ has to be willing to take some shots, which is exactly what he did. I mean, really in their first 2 big matchups, he wasn't shy about taking advantage and correctly reading one-on-one. So hopefully that will carry over into their second road competition of the season. Listen, folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk keys to victory on defense. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the CFB Nation channel. I'm going to be going live tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time for the next installment of the Spread Option, something you're not going to want to miss because this is an awesome slate of games coming up this weekend. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 3 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we're going to be talking the keys to victory for Notre Dame's defense. Now, this is a side of the ball that everybody's been talking about, rightfully so, and there's things that they're going to have to do in this matchup to help Notre Dame's offense out and to walk away roughly Saturday around 3:30, 4 p.m. with a victory. Gosh, I hope actually not 4 p.m. our time, but hopefully they do the things that they need to come away with a victory. And when we start diving into keys to victory, Brian, where we start out, it kind of goes back to the team keys to victory, about being a more physical team and being the aggressor. This defense has to be aggressive with everything they do this weekend.
Yeah, it's got to. I mean, it has to be the foundation of what you're doing in this game, and it's similar to last week where we had the whole change everything is game is key number one. I'm not going to go into a rant like I did last week, but you just can't keep doing what you're doing, but just make this little adjustment, make that little adjustment. That's not going to do it. It has to be, hey, what we did isn't working, so we got to do something different. That's flat out what it has to be. Has to be that. And if it's not that, then this team is gonna struggle to stop it to stop Arkansas. So they're going to have to do better. So it come out, be aggressive, be downhill. I mean, even something as simple as like their downhill run game. It's not super complicated, ISOs, wraps, counters, things like that. They'll run a toss. But if your linebackers are going to be sitting there waiting on those guys to get to them, they're going to get run over. And not because they're not good players, but it's just sheer physics. These are 230, 240-pound backs. Your quarterback is tall and skinny, but what's he listed at? He's listed like 220-something, isn't he, Trev? I think on their roster.
Taylor Green?
Yeah. What's he listed
at? He's 235.
Okay, yeah, there you go. He's really skinny, but he's got some weight to him. And so you're going to have to be prepared to handle that. And their offensive line's big and physical. If you're asking Donovan Heinisch to just kind of take hits, and if you're asking Jason Onye to just take hits, they're going to get driven off the ball. And that's not on them. That's on you as a coaching staff. Let them attack. Be the more physical team, but be the faster team. Be the more aggressive team. Take the fight to Arkansas. If you do that, then it gets down to who's more disciplined and who's got the better athletes. And the answer to that question needs to be Notre Dame. I know the answer to the second one's Notre Dame. Who has the better athletes? That's Notre Dame. But if you don't play discipline, if you don't play fast, if you don't play aggressive, then here's the thing. When I'm fast, but I don't run, you're going to be faster than me. That's not rocket science. If I'm being asked to go 3/4 speed and read and reacting while you're going full speed, and I'm a 4.5 and you're a 4.7, you're going to be faster than me. So if you allow me to play downhill, to be fast, up front, at the linebacker level, at corner, and at safety, then now we can use our speed. And so far this season, Notre Dame hasn't been able to use its athleticism on defense. That's the biggest frustration I have. There's a list of 20 of them. But at the very top, you're not using your athletes. Use your athletes this week. Be aggressive. Because, hey, your whole read, react, don't get hands-on, don't play fast, don't do all that stuff. You've tried that, and your defense is a hot mess. Now it's time to say, okay, let's pin our ears back and let these kids go play ball. Because they've looked pretty good when I've asked them to do that this week. And it's up to Marcus Freeman to go and say, hey, listen, it's up to you to go make it happen. Right? Let these kids go play ball. Be aggressive, attack. And we're going to see if they do that or not. Or are they just so dead set on, no, we decided to make this change, even though we've been great at this and we've recruited to this, we've decided we're going to make this change. So we're just going to tweak a couple things to get better at it, and then we're going to keep doing it. I don't know the answer to that question, and I wish I did. And I wish I was more confident that we were going to get the right answer, but I'm not. But if you don't do number one, you won't do the next three or the next four. That's just a fact.
Agreed. This defense has to play fast, physical, violent, fly downhill to the football, and for the love of all things that are holy, if somebody does something good in this game, please celebrate it. I've watched him back-to-back weeks, Drake Bowen light somebody up. And then after the play's over, he's the only one celebrating. I watched Jalen Stroman do it on the first drive against Purdue. He gets up, and everybody's like, all right, let's go get.
Well, it's because they're all looking at the sideline. What's the play now? Yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Let them freaking have some fun playing football.
That's what I'm saying. I want to. That is something that I really, really want to see. Just 11 guys flying around, 11 hats of the football, play fast, play violent, play downhill. That all falls under being aggressive. But look, in order for the other four keys to happen, you do have to be aggressive. But the second key that we're going to talk about for this defense is you have to be able to control the middle, slow down the run game, and keep Taylor Green in the pocket. Because, Brian, at the end of the day, Taylor Green's a dangerous football player, man. He's had over 360 total yards of offense in every game this season, including I believe he had 420 something against Ole Miss and over 370 against Memphis. He's a dangerous football player. Notre Dame is going to have to do a good job of controlling the middle to make sure that they walk away with a win.
This is a game where controlling the middle has to include multiple things. It can't just be lining up your D tackles and saying, hey, hold up against Carmona and the other interior guys. That's part of it. You also have to be careful that it's not just, okay, well, they're bigger and stronger than we are, so we're going to twist and stun our way to success. That's not really it either. And ties into, like you said, Trev, the be aggressive thing. Be willing to crash your linebackers downhill like last year. Occupy gaps aggressively and physically. And it's not about two-gapping and then letting your right linebackers read and react. That's not going to work this game. This has to be about our linebackers are taking the fight to them. It really ties into number one. And what it does first and foremost, if you can control the middle of the line of scrimmage with both levels of your first and second level of your defense, that slows down their run game. Part of what has made this such a dangerous football team, Trevor, is Arkansas is very balanced. And you look at their success so far this season, offensively, they're throwing for over 300 yards a game. They're at 324, but they're also rushing for 227.8 yards per game as well. And what they have not done is had like that one game that just padded the stats. You know, like the Arkansas State game, they went for 321, but they went for 194 against Alabama A&M. They went for 221 against Ole Miss. They went for 175 against Memphis at 5.5 yards per carry. They're a very balanced rushing team also. Taylon Green's got 360 yards rushing, some on scrambles, some on design runs. Mike Washington already has 330 yards rushing at 7.2 per carry. Taylon Green's at 8.2 per carry. And then Braylon Russell, their 240-pound beast running back, who last year was over 5 yards a carry last season. This year, he's over 5 yards a carry, 5.2. He was at 5.3. Hold on a second. Let me go look. Yeah, he was 5.3 last year. You know, he's at 150 yards and 5.2 yards per carry. So they're going to keep throwing these big boys at you, thinking you're going to have to commit resources to the box. And then that's when they, do their stuff outside. They get the quarterback outside the box. You've got to have a way to attack that and get after that. And you got to slow down that run game, because if they become one-dimensional as a throwing team, they're going to make some plays, but you're also going to make some plays defensively if you are coached even remotely halfly okay. So that's number one. And then number two, part of controlling the middle of the line of scrimmage is you keep Taylon Green in the pocket or outside of it. And what I mean by that is what you don't want to let Taylon Green do is get running vertically. If he starts getting running downhill, either on designed runs or on scrambles where you over pursue or you lose your containment inside, and he sees those big running lanes and he gets vertical. I mean, he takes 3 steps and he's at 10 yards. And I'm not even joking about that. Once he gets running, he's such a long strider. He can cover 10 yards in 3-4 steps. I mean, when he's really sprinting. And you've got to make sure that when he's running backwards or left and right. That's going to be the key, because he'll get his yards. I mean, that's fine. I don't mind that. He's going to get some yards in this game. But if you get him in the pocket, he'll make some mistakes as a thrower. And then he's not a super accurate passer. So unless you're just turning guys wide open, which is possible, in this game, you're going to force him into some mistakes. And that's what Notre Dame's going to have to do in this game, is they're going to have to be able to keep him in the pocket and not let him get going vertically. And if they can do that, I think this team will have success forcing him into mistakes. Look, when you play good teams and you play offenses that have the weapons Arkansas has, you can live with a couple big plays. As we mentioned, Georgia hit 3 big plays against them last year. You live with that. You've seen Georgia Tech hit a big play down the middle of the field, a 60-something yard gain. Just didn't let it score. I mean, we've seen teams hit big plays on Notre Dame, but that's going to happen. It's all the other plays where you're -2, +2 that need incomplete pass that is where you're going to shine, that this team has lost its way on. So if you can make them one-dimensional by controlling the line, especially the inside, because if you get those 240-pound backs running left and right the whole game, that kind of plays into your hands. They want to run at you, off tackle or downhill. And Same thing with Taylor Green. When you do that, then you limit the run game and you keep him in the pocket also and not let him get vertical. Their offense becomes way less effective. Way less effective. And I can live with a shot here, a shot there, because this game plan, if you're aggressive, control the middle, what you're going to do is you're now going to make this game about his decision making. And yes, he'll hit a couple big plays, but he's going to have a lot more incompletes, maybe some turnovers mixed in there as well. And that leads to number 3, Trev, is on top of this is you've got to do some things to get in his head with your alignments, with your pressures, by getting in his face, not letting him get going. He'll get real frustrated and real impatient, and that's how you get into his head, which is key number 3.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to have to find a way to throw him off of his game and get him out of a rhythm. Because like I said, in every game this season, he's had over 360 total yards of offense to himself because defenses have struggled at times to get inside of his head. And that's everything from switching up your pressures, switching up your alignments, disguising different coverages, doing things post-snap to make him think he's seeing one thing, and then the coverage is actually another. But look, man, at the end of the day, right now, FanDuel's pretty high on what Taylor Green is going to be able to do in this game. His over-under for passing yards right now is set at 268.5, which, unfortunately, for Notre Dame, I'd be lying if I said that's a crazy number, considering Ryan Brown didn't even play the whole game and threw for 250 yards. So this is one where the Notre Dame secondary, Notre Dame coaching staff is going to have to do a good job of throwing him off of his rhythm so he doesn't start throwing for 270, 280, 290. It's going to have to happen.
He's at 322 against Alabama A&M, 305 against Ole Miss, 325 against Memphis. The only game he did not throw for that number, Trev, was the Arkansas State game where he passed for 239 yards, but only threw 26 passes in that game. And the reason that he didn't throw for more is because he basically only played 2.5 quarters. I mean, he didn't play a lot of that game. Their backup quarterback came in that game, went 3 for 3 for 70 yards. So so he hasn't actually been stopped in those situations. He just got stopped by his own coaches who pulled him out of a blowout win and got him on the sideline. So in the way that Notre Dame has played so far, I get why the number from FanDuel is set at 260 in this game. I get it. If he's under that, I feel good about it. Obviously, there's the chance that means Arkansas is running all over Notre Dame, but I think there's a better chance that if he's under 260 that Notre Dame's forced him into some incompletions in this game. Hopefully that's the case. Or turnovers.
I'm hoping so, man. I'm hoping so. The next key to victory here, Brian, is Notre Dame is going to have to do a good job of playing great situational football. Situational football, talking third downs, red zones, sudden changes. For sudden changes, are you talking like if the offense does happen to turn the ball over, they got to go back out onto the field? And yeah, I mean, Notre Dame's defense is going to have to do a really, really good job of winning on those situational football downs. Because again, on the road, if Arkansas is able to stack third down conversions, if you're not getting them to third down, all those issues will start to stack up.
Yeah, situational football, I mean, Arkansas is a team that so far this season has been great in situational football through 4 games. Now, they've played better defenses than the way Notre Dame's defense has played. I don't believe that they've played better defenses in regards to how to where Notre Dame is talent-wise. But can Notre Dame play to that way? Can they play that way? Can they be great on first down, which then leads to third and medium and third and longs? And then in those situations, can you do what you haven't done all year, which is actually get teams off the field on third and long? You know, that's going to obviously be a big key. If you get them to a lot of third downs, then you're going to have a better shot of having success. I mean, and the longer third downs you can get them in, the better. I mean, Arkansas comes into this game, I think they are 6th. What did we have them? Yes, 6th in the country in third down offense, Trev. They're at 61.9% in third down offense, which is a very impressive number. But if you look at it also, Trev, they rank 102nd in college football right now in third down opportunities. That means they're not getting to third down very often. And now when they are, they're very good at it, and you know, props to them for doing that. But the point is, they're such a big play team, and they're so good on first down and first and second down that teams aren't getting them into a lot of third downs so far this season. They went, if you look at their offense, they went 9 of 14 in the opener, 5 of 6 against Arkansas State, 9 of 12 against Ole Miss. But they went 3 of 10 against Memphis on third down. And guess what? They had their lowest scoring output of the season. They had their worst second half of the season by far. And they scored 3 points in the second half. And then, your offense, you're not able to get it done at the end of the game. So get them in more third mediums, third and longs, and then be good in those situations is going to be huge for Notre Dame. Arkansas also has one of the best red zone defenses in offenses in college football. They rank second in college football in red zone offense. They've gotten into the red zone 17 times this year. And in those 17 opportunities, Trev, they have scored touchdowns 16 times. And that's pretty good. They rank 34th in the country in red zone opportunities, which means they have been a big play team. But that's still a lot of red zone trips. I mean, it's still a decent amount of red zone trips, and they're scoring touchdowns when they get in there. Look, they're going to get into the red zone in this game. Hold them to field goals on some of those times. I mean, that's it's not that complicated. They literally they're 2 of 4 this year on field goal attempts. That's it, 2 of 4. They went 17 of 24 last year, which is okay, but not great. So far, they haven't been necessarily a great field goal team. They went 0 for 2 against Ole Miss. It's pretty big. In a game you lost by 7 points, that's pretty big. So hold them to field goals. But if their drives end with 3 points instead of 7 points, that's a win for the defense. That's a big win for the defense. That's part of situational football. And as you mentioned, Trev, sudden change is huge. If your offense turns the ball over, you got to be good about not giving up touchdowns. It's a very big, very, very big key in this game. Situational football is going to be very important.
Last key, Brian, and I have such a love-hate relationship with seeing this on an outline for keys to victory. But the last key to victory is Notre Dame has to tackle well. In their first 2 games, they missed 21 tackles between Miami and Texas A&M. They only missed 2 tackles against Purdue. And it wasn't just because it was Purdue. I want to make that clear. When you go back and run through and look at the film, they were tackling with better fundamentals. They were a little bit more aggressive, attacking ball carriers when they were facing Purdue. So, yes, on one hand, is it a little different tackling Devin Mockabee and Michael Jackson III than it is tackling Le'Veon Moss or Casey Concepcion or Mario Craver? Sure, to varying degrees, but Notre Dame tackled with better fundamentals against Purdue. But it begs the question, what's the real Notre Dame defense? Is it the one in terms of tackling? Is it the defense that we saw against Miami and Texas A&M, or is it the one that we saw against Purdue? Like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with this being on the keys to victory, but regardless, you're going up against some players who have a lot of talent. I think I remember looking this up. I think out of Omega Blake's 300-some-odd receiving yards this year, over 140 of them have been yards after the catch. So he's elusive in the open field. Taylon Green at 6'6", 235 is hard to bring down. And like we've talked about, they have 2 really big running backs. I mean, Mike Washington at what is he? 6'1", 228 pounds is their smaller running back. Because they have Braylon Russell coming off the bench who's 240. So tackling is going to be huge in this game.
Yep. It's not just tackling in the standpoint of also, Trevor, it's not just about, getting juked and giving up big plays like A&M. It's also about when you hit their running backs, don't let them drag you for 3-4 more yards.
Yep.
It's 2nd and 8. You hit them 2 yards down the field, and instead of it being 3rd and 6, they drag you for 4 yards and it's 3rd and 2. Those are big yards in a game like this. 3rd and 2 is going to be a lot easier for them to convert than 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. That's what tackling is too. It's not just about, don't give up 50-yard gains because you got juked in space. That's important. That's what a lot of the focus is on. But my focus is first and foremost on those hidden yards. Those kind of yards after contact where you hit the running back to the line of scrimmage and, he kind of drags you until somebody else comes along. And instead of it being 2nd and 10 because you had that great initial read, it's now 2nd and 5 because he dragged you for 5 yards. Those are going to be parts of it as well. And that just goes back to being a sound fundamental football team. And if you can be a sound fundamental football team, then guess what? you're going to have a chance to beat Arkansas because they're not a really sound fundamental football team. But I would also argue, Trevor, that if you're also not a team that is willing to, how do I say this? If you're not willing to be aggressive and play real big boy football defense, I should say, then you're not going to force them to make mistakes. Part of defense, a team that's prone to mistakes, you have to force them into them. And if you just sit back and play the way you've played the first 3 games, they won't make as many mistakes. They won't. So Ryan Brown threw a pick in the game, right? Did he throw a pick in the game?
Mm-hmm.
When was it?
It was when Madden Framo rode out the running back, tipped it up in the air. Christian Gray picked it off.
So you were aggressive, right? He's been a guy that's been prone to interceptions. He threw, 3 against USC? Because they went after him. It turned it up on him. You turned him into 1 on one of the limited times where you didn't even allow. Just Madden Framo kind of played that way. It was more about Madden Framo than it was a better play call. I was just a Madden Framo been out there like, I'm freaking hungry. I want to go make a play. Just awesome. So you got to force them into mistakes, Trev.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be a big part of this game. We've talked about this. Carson Beck he'll throw turnovers if you put him in those situations. You just sat back and just let him get comfortable in the pocket and didn't put him in those situations. You've got to dictate success in this game. And tackling is a very similar thing. If you're just going to sit back and just ask your guys to wait and read and react and not play downhill, then these running backs are going to get ahead of steam and they're going to run you over, and 2-yard gain turns into a 6-yard gain or an 8-yard gain. The potential quarterback sack is going to turn into a scramble for 15. Like it all starts back at the very top. I think because also if you're aggressive, Drake hits that linebacker, running back stands him up, and he's about to maybe try and push forward on Drake, and next thing you know, Jaden or Osbury or Kingston drills him, and then Onye comes over and drills him, and it's bam, 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 right back after another. That guy has no momentum going. He's going down. That's what was so good about last year's defense. It's like one guy would hit him, and then before he could get to his second step of momentum, the next 2-3 guys come in and hit him. They swarmed to the football. This team does not do that, which makes them more prone to you stand a guy up in the hole, and he's got the momentum on you, and he's going to drag you. It all leads back to the top. But those hidden yards, I'm very curious to see how Notre Dame is able to limit those type of opportunities for Arkansas in this game.
Couldn't agree more. And it all goes back to the first point that you and I talked about, Brian. This defense has to stay aggressive. And if they do that, they're going to put themselves in a good position to win on Saturday afternoon. I couldn't agree more. Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for part 3 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready for the fun part. We're talking predictions. We're talking game wreckers. Then we're going to get into some more content as this show goes on. But before we get there, make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian. The next part of today's show on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel. It's the fun part. We get to go over some of our predictions. We get to go over some game wreckers on offense and defense. This is the part of the show that I look forward to. We get to see how close we get. We get to talk about, how we view this game is going out, how we view it going down. We give what our final score prediction is, and then we're going to talk about game wreckers, players that we believe they're going to be able to turn this game loose. So I'll go ahead and get us kicked off here, Brian. And when I look at this game, it has just all the makings for a shootout, doesn't it? I mean, truly. And as much as that pains me to say, at the end of the day, I just want Notre Dame to win. And that's what I have in my score prediction. I have Notre Dame winning this one 45-38. Like I said, all the makings for a shootout. And I can sit here and talk about, hey, if Notre Dame's defense does this and this and this and this, well, this will make it the 4th game in a row that I've talked about all that stuff. And until they go out and do it, it's just going to be a show me until you do. I want them to come out and be aggressive, switch up their coverages, get more hands-on man. But if you're not going to do it against Purdue and you're not going to do it against Texas A&M, until I see it, I just got to believe that it's not going to happen, as frustrating as that is, against Arkansas. So I have Notre Dame winning this one 45-38. I think this does come down to who has more talent on either side of their roster. And I do believe that to be Notre Dame. And so when I go and I look at this matchup, man, I mean, look, like I said, all the makings for an old-fashioned shootout. The highlight for both of these teams have been their offense, while the defense for both teams have kind of been the areas where they've struggled the most. The middle eight is going to be absolutely huge for Notre Dame in this game. I cannot emphasize that enough. Notre Dame has gotten dominated in the middle eight. They've allowed 24 points at the end of each first half. Well, all first halves combined that they've played, but they've only allowed 10 points in the third quarter. Whether that's because of the team that they're playing making a mistake, whether that's Notre Dame's defense stepping up and finally sending more than a four-man pressure, because that also always seems to happen in the third quarter after their defensive coordinator decides he's watched 2.5 quarters of them not getting home. Whatever the reason is, they've only allowed 10 points across all 3 third quarters that they've played. The middle eight is going to be absolutely massive for Notre Dame in this game. I think this game will be back and forth for the majority of the first half. Crowd's going to be crazy. Notre Dame's offense, it's going to be punch, counter punch. Notre Dame's offense will have to capitalize on whatever stops the defense can get, because as much as the defense has struggled, I'm also not going to paint this picture that opposing offenses are, 30 for 30 on their drives against this defense in terms of putting points on the board. When you do get stops, or if you do, believe me, I know it's close. I went back and looked. It's not, they're not 30 for 30, bro. They're not 30 for 30, but I'd be lying if I said they were 9 of 30. So
yeah, it's close.
It's close,
but
close. It's not 30 for 30, bro. But it's also not 9 for 30. I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
But if this game gets in a scenario where Mike Denbrock has to call this game and put the game away, and it's on the shoulders of CJ Carr and Jeremiah Love and Malachi Fields and Eli Raridan, I have a lot of confidence in that. I have Notre Dame winning. I believe I have Notre Dame winning. Final score. There you go. I have them winning 45-38.
Yeah, that makes me sad that I don't think you're nuts for having that score. I'm actually going a little bit lower scoring game, Trevor.
Okay.
Not by a lot, but I'm going with a lower scoring game. I'm going to do
47-34.
Yes, I think you're way off, Trevor. I have 44-37. Let me just say this first and foremost. There will be a game at some point in time when Notre Dame figures it out. Here's what I've come to realize. Marcus Freeman is like a lot of great coaches in that he's stubborn. And stubborn coaches don't want to admit that things that they do were maybe not the best decisions. And that's not even just about hiring Chris Ash. That's also about changing your defensive structure and philosophy. He can tell us until he's blue in the face that, no, we're still the same defense. And a lot of other people might believe that because they don't know football. I know football, you know football, and that's not the same defense. It's not even close to the same defense. And it's not about being young or not being good here or there or wherever else. It's about you decided to make a change. You hired a guy to implement that change. He's terrible, and the change isn't necessarily working. And what Marcus Freeman's going to have to realize is the change is not necessarily a bad one. You can be a great defense playing a lot of zone. It's the way that you're implementing that change that's the problem. He is a stubborn coach like a lot of people, number one. Number two, he still also is a very good football coach who didn't accidentally lead his team to a 14-2 record last year. And it wasn't Al Golden was the magic sauce to Notre Dame's success, and now that he's gone, they can never win again. And that's not in any way to take away from the great job that Al Golden did. It just means that it's something that should be the standard at Notre Dame and the norm at Notre Dame. There's going to come a point in time when Marcus Freeman is going to say enough is enough and either force a change from Chris Ash, meaning Chris Ash makes a change, or B, he's going to have someone else running the defense. One of those two things is going to happen. And when it does, and Notre Dame gets back to playing Notre Dame football, whoever they're playing, I don't care if it's Arkansas, Boise, NC State, USC, I don't care when it happens. When it happens, Notre Dame's going to destroy that team that they're playing. They're going to destroy them. I hope it's this week, but I'm just not going to predict it. I can't predict it. So I'm going 37-31 Notre Dame. And I don't have I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to give you the gut feeling but I think this is the week they figure it out. I have no clue. So this isn't a covering my bases okay, I'm predicting a close game, but when in reality, Notre Dame's going to go win 45-7. I'm like, see, I told you this could happen. It could happen. It will happen at some point in time. I promise you that. And that's going to happen. I just don't know when it's going to be. And I have no faith after watching last week that all of a sudden it's just going to happen this week, but it will happen. But honestly, the thing that's frustrating is that's how this game should go. This is a reeling football team in Arkansas. Reeling team. I think they're on the verge of just kind of being like, okay, we're done. But you've got to be willing to say, we're going to go after them and we're going to take it to them and we're going to force them to quit. We're going to no-moss them the way we did USC in 2017. And we're going to no-moss them the way that we did to USC in 2023. That's what we're going to do. And take it to them. So if you can do that, then you should win this game convincingly. Whether that's 45-17 or whatever, like the score I said, I don't know. But this is the kind of game that you should dominate if you play Notre Dame football. But I can't predict they're going to play Notre Dame football until I see it. And, if I see it, then that'll be great. And I'll feel better about next week's prediction. But that's how this game should go. I still think it's going to be a shootout. I think we'll see enough changes from the Notre Dame defense. And I think look, again, I got to see anything different. There'll be some superficial changes. What that looks like, I don't know. You'll probably see Devontae Smith and Dallas Golden rotate again nickel. I think we'll see a Don Schuler and Tay Johnson next to each other at safety, which I think is good for Notre Dame. I think we'll see some minor variances in how they go at Arkansas. And it'll be enough to force Taylor Green into some mistakes. They'll still hit some big plays. They'll still have too many plays that they give up easy 12 to 15-yard gains, and that'll frustrate the heck out of us. But I think they'll do enough changing and enough occasional pressures to force Arkansas into mistakes. And then the Notre Dame offense will capitalize and have a big day. So I actually picked 37-31 because I do think that this is maybe a game where Notre Dame's going to have to rely a little bit more on field goals. So 4 touchdowns and 3 field goals as opposed to I had originally on 38-31, 5 touchdowns and a field goal. I'm going the other way just because there's going to be a game where Notre Dame just offensively just doesn't have it in some area. But I still think you're going to run the ball well enough. You're going to throw the ball on Arkansas. You're going to make big plays, and you're going to have enough to win this game. Notre Dame is still the more talented team. They're still the better coach team. Even with the current issues, they're still the better coach football team. And as long as we don't see regression on one side of the ball, this is still a game they should win. And I think that they will. So that's where I have it. Because and my 37-31 doesn't necessarily have me feeling like, oh my gosh. Like I could even see it being a thing where Arkansas scores last to make it 37-31. Because again, this is not as they have a better offense than Miami, in my opinion, than what Notre Dame faced in the opener. I think that their offense is comparable, if not better. It's arguable about if they're better than A&M. I think their quarterback's better. I think A&M's better at running back, but they run, but their quarterback is a more dangerous runner, in my opinion. The receiving core at A&M is better. The way their lines are playing, I have not been blown away with Texas A&M's offensive line so far this year. I think Arkansas's offensive line's played better than A&M's offensive line so far. They're very comparable. And Bobby Petrino, like Colin Klein, but Bobby Petrino is one of the best minds in the game. This is arguably the best offense you'll face this year. But as a team, they're not as good as Miami or Texas A&M, and I don't think they're as gifted as Texas A&M and Miami across the board. Is that fair? And I think that this is a game where I think Notre Dame kind of says, okay, we're going to start being Notre Dame again, and we see glimpses of it on defense, and the offense keeps doing what they're doing. That's how I see this game playing out, Trev. Could they lose this game? Of course. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Could they blow Arkansas out? Absolutely. but I need to see it first before I'm ready to predict it. But I'm just telling you right now, I don't know when it's going to be, but there will be a game when Marcus Freeman says enough of this, and he forces change. And when that happens, I'm telling you, Trev, this team will destroy whoever it is they play. I'm just telling you that's going to happen. And I hope that it's this week. I hope that it's noticeable by the end of the first quarter, like, oh, dude, this is not the same defense we saw the last 3 weeks. That's the Notre Dame defense. I hope it's this week. And I'm going to say something else. If Leonard Moore can't play in this game and they still sit back and play soft coverage, I'm going to lose it. Lose it. Not having Leonard Moore is even more reason to attack so that they don't have to cover longer. But even if you get him back, I want to see more aggressive play. That's what I want to see. But I hope this is the week we see that, Trevor. But do you think I'm nuts for saying that? Like, I know show me and all this, but I'm telling you, Marcus Freeman's not going to do what we've seen for 12 games. He's just not. There's no way he's going to do that. I just don't see it. Not on his side of the ball, not on defense. He may be stubborn, but he's not that stubborn.
Sure.
And I just think whenever that change gets made, we're going to be like, all right, the rest of this year is going to be a lot of fun.
No, I definitely don't think you're crazy for saying it. I mean, odds are it will change. It's just the hardest part that I had about this prediction in general, Brian, is I spent a lot of time talking about, okay, like where do they match up? Okay, A&M has this offensive lineman, but Arkansas has this offensive lineman, but Miami had this receiver. And my biggest takeaway was the reason why Notre Dame has lost is yes, they've played good teams. They've played some talented positions, but it's been Notre Dame versus Notre Dame a lot of the time.
Yep.
And that's not to discredit Miami. That's not to discredit Texas A&M, but it's hard for me to imagine a world where, you know, like you said, your score prediction is 31 or 37-31. It's hard for me to imagine Arkansas scoring last and having like 24 points in the first couple of quarters when I watched Purdue score 23 in the first half. You know, like that's what's so hard about because what you're saying is not crazy at all. But that's what's so hard about like, okay, well, but I also didn't have it on my bingo card that 17-year-old Malachi Toney was going to make this defense look like Swiss cheese. I also didn't have it to where Mississippi State transfer Mario Craver was going to put on a Bolitnikoff performance in South Bend under the lights either.
Yeah.
Because you look at those players, like they're good football players.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't have done what they did against this Mike Mickens-led secondary and Leonard Moore and Christian Gray and all these guys. And so that's what made this prediction so hard because nothing that you're saying is crazy. I do believe that once that switch flips, this defense is going to look nasty again. And I think it's going to happen quicker than what some people might think. It's like, okay, but then they make the identity switch and then they got to take weeks to rep it. I don't think like this defense has played so bad that once they make that switch, it's going to be very evident. Very evident. I just hope you're right, man. I hope this is the weekend for it because, look, man, I would be lying if I said that I'm not prepared to just sit down and watch this defense get shredded and then watch Notre Dame's offense put up enough points to win. I'd be lying if I said that I'm not prepared for that. Unfortunately, I'm not saying I'm happy about it, but that's unfortunately just where I'm at right now. But Brian, we both have Notre Dame winning. Yeah.
I mean, but Trevor, I totally get that, man. It's fair to say that look, we're Notre Dame fans. We want this team to be great. We want this team to compete for a title and all those type of things. And I'll admit I'm wrong when I'm wrong. If this team didn't have the talent that we thought it would have, I'd say, look, guys, they're just not as good as I thought they're. That's what's so frustrating. It's not that. It's not that this team doesn't have the talent that we think it should have. Oh, this guy's a fault. No. This team has the talent to be 3-0 right now and 3-0 with none of the games all that close. That's where this team should be. And Mario Craver's a good football player. You hold him to 6 catches for 100 yards instead of 6 catches for 200 yards, and you win that game by 2 touchdowns. I mean, is that too much to ask that you only allow Mario Craver to have 100 yards instead of 200 yards? I mean, like seriously, like, and you lost by 1 because you muffed the extra point at the end of the game. It's like that game was going to come down to who had the best 2-point conversion plays. That's literally what this game was going to come down to. And I still don't know that I have a lot of faith that Notre Dame would have made the stops in those situations. But like I said, this team is still capable of excellence. And it's there's a lot of teams like on the schedule, just like, man, I can't wait to play this defense. And then the week that changes, the rest of the like, man, seriously, you couldn't have waited 2 more weeks to fix it. We were about to have a field day. You know what I mean? Seriously, man.
Yep.
And I think that's going to happen. And I hope that this is the week that Marcus Freeman said, look, you know, you're going to do what I'm telling you to do, or I'm going to find someone else that's going to do it. We're going to attack. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to do this. You're going to incorporate all the coaches are going to have a say in this. We're going to attack this football team. I hope this is the statement game for Marcus Freeman and not well, let's protect the defense with a ground and pound offense and just come out with a W. And no. It's time for you to turn this team loose, man. And that's what I hope we see. But to your point, I'm not going to predict it until we see it. But would I be shocked if we're sitting there at the end of the day and it's 45-24, 45-17, 38-13? Nope. Not at all. Because the talent is there. Yep. But I just got to see it first. And I hope this is the week we do it. Really do it. Make my travel a whole lot more fun. That's for sure.
Man, yeah. I'm telling you.
So we're not doing our predictions yet, Trev. We got some game wreckers we're going to predict. So what we do here is we have a little bit of fun. We kind of basically say, hey, if the games are going to go how we think they should go, not necessarily how we've predicted, but how they should go, or how, you know, for Notre Dame to get a win, here are the guys that we predict are going to be the game wreckers. Game wreckers, guys that kind of take over games, make big plays, dominate in some way, or have, even if it's going to be someone who has 2 huge plays and that's all that they do, but guys who have a really big impact on how this game is going to go. And so we'll start with offense, Trev. Who is your first game wrecker? Actually, just give me all your game wreckers, and we'll see kind of where we are in that comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, look. At some point, my first game wrecker is just going to have to come true. And the first one that I have is Jaden Greathouse. And look, he is somebody that it is now no secret. It is now no secret what Notre Dame is going to try to do on offense. They're going to continue to rotate their running backs, look to take shots on the perimeter to Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison. And look, the middle of the field is just an area that Notre Dame hasn't tried to attack yet this season. Think of all the big plays that they've gained this year in the run and pass game. Jeremiah Love's wheel route, that was on the perimeter. Malachi Fields' contested catches on the perimeter. Jordan Faison's wheel route for a touchdown on the perimeter. Eli Raridan's 2 big plays in back-to-back weeks against Miami and Texas A&M have been on the perimeter. At some point, I have to believe that Travis Williams is going to look at what Notre Dame's offense did and say, okay, we're just not going to let them take shots on the perimeter. Because that's how this offense has moved the ball very effectively in big plays. That's going to pave the way for your 6'1", 215-pound slot receiver, who we watched absolutely tear apart Penn State and Ohio State secondary in the second halves of those games. I got to believe at some point it's going to happen. And kind of how you talked about your overall prediction, Brian, talk about the defensive turnaround. I think this game has the makings for, okay, this is now finally time for Mike Denbrock to let Jaden Greathouse loose. He had 0 targets last game. I actually technically 1 on a throwaway pass, but only 1 target. He has 6 total on the season, 2 catches, 41 yards. This is now the time for him. So he's my first one. The sad part is once in back-to-back weeks, Brian, you can't even bet on him. Back-to-back weeks. As of right now, when you go and you look at the FanDuel player props, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for them to come out, but we are now in back-to-back Thursdays where you can't even bet on Jaden Greathouse. And I think on game day, you could bet on him last week. And I think his over-under was set at 22.5 yards, and he missed that by 22.5 yards. So, so at some point, Jaden Greathouse is going to have to find a way to get involved. Or, excuse me, Mike Denbrock is going to have to find a way to get Jaden Greathouse involved. And I think
you got to force it. At some point in time, you've got to force it. Yes. But also take advantage of it when those matchups are there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care that he didn't play great against Miami. So one bad game doesn't negate what he did in the 2 biggest stages you guys played on last year. Use him. Because if this team truly becomes to where, think about it, if Jaden Greathouse has a big game, that means in 4 games, you'll have had Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse, Malachi Fields, and Eli Raridan will have all had a big game in just 4 games. How do you defend that? And, oh, by the way, crap, they also throw the ball to Jeremiah Love. who's this Micah Gilbert kid coming off the bench catching touchdowns against? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we didn't even mention Will Pauling, and Janarian Price, who they could use in the pass game. So if they can get Jaden Greathouse going, I just don't know how you prepare to stop this football team. You got to start for something, and then whoever you're going to take away is just going to part of the reason Jordan Faison went off last week is because after that first big play, they started adjusting their coverage, played off to the field, thinking they're not going to throw a bunch of far hash out cuts, are they? Stop routes, are they? Yeah, they are. So, we'll just bracket Malachi Fields and take away the middle of the field because their redshirt freshman quarterback's not going to be throwing the ball all the way to the sideline from the far hash, will he? Yep, yeah, he will. Yes, he absolutely will. Well, we better defend that. Cool. Touchdown. You know what I mean? This is kind of what you can be right now. If I'm another team, I'm not overly afraid of Notre Dame beating me over the middle of the field right now.
Nope.
And when I'm talking about middle of the field, I'm not talking about a 60-yard bomb. I'm talking about from 5 to 20 is what I'm talking about. I'm not worried about them hitting a bunch of slot route outcuts, slot outcuts and stuff like that, because they're just not hitting those routes. Everything has been to the perimeter. Eli Raridon's 2 biggest plays of the years on the outside. Jeremiah Love's big play this year on the outside. Everything's been outside. Eventually, teams are going to say, okay, we're going to defend that. Purdue was not smart enough to do that. And I think Arkansas will. So this is a game where Jaden Greathouse has to have a big game. I had him on my list, Trev, also. I also have Eli Raridon on my list for the exact same reason. I think he's a matchup nightmare. And I think he's a guy that can make some plays up the seams, over the top, especially in play action. I think there's a lot of things you can do this week to get him involved as well. And I think this is a week where Eli Raridon bounces back with a pretty big game, running and blocking. And so, it's not just a pass game. It's running and blocking. He's going to have to be a force in the run game as well, helping out the offensive linemen against those big Arkansas D linemen, getting to the second level against those athletic linebackers. This is going to be a game where Eli Raridon has to be a performer for you in all phases. And that's what I loved about last week, Trev, because he wasn't part of the pass game. I mean, it was very obvious early on that this is not a tight end game. This is going to be an outside game. And that's okay. So what did Eli do? He wasn't pouting in his feels about why am I not getting touched? It's okay. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to run the ball all day. Cool. Let me go dominate in the run game. I got you. That's and that's also true for Greathouse as well. Is it's not just pass game where Jaden Greathouse needs to have a big day. It's also in the run game. And so far the Miami game was very disappointing all around. It wasn't just Jaden Greathouse. The A&M game, outside of one bad block by Faison, was really well blocked. Even I've pointed that bad block by Faison out multiple times. He also had 2 monster blocks on 2 touchdown runs. So it's like it shouldn't have come down to that one block, but when your defense gives up 41, it kind of does. He had Greathouse had another big block this weekend on Jeremiah Loves, and then Faison came down and hit a guy and allowed Jeremiah to bounce outside of him. Those things matter too. Those are part of being a game wrecker too. Get to that safety so that way Jeremiah Love can have a free reign to get somewhere, or Jadarian Price. So both of those guys are going to be big for me in both phases of the game. Who else you have on your game wreckers list, Trevor?
Eli Raridon was also on mine for a lot of the same reasons. I am going to be interested to see in pass game, because I agree with everything you said in the run. This is one of the few teams on Notre Dame's schedule that has a safety that can physically match up. I'm talking height measurables match up.
He's
with
like
Eli
6'4",
Raridon.
right?
Yeah. Yep, Larry Worth. He's 6'4". I think he is. Give me just a second here. He is 6'4", 226 pounds. Long kid.
He looks like a linebacker.
He does.
He's a big kid.
He transferred in, and he was a linebacker when he first got recruited, and then he transferred, and then he basically took the opposite career path of what Sonny Styles did at Ohio State, and he moved back a level. But he's an athletic kid, and then Xavier Sori is another athletic kid. He's a 6'3", 240 some odd pound linebacker. So he's this is one of the few defenses that can match up well with Raridon.
The interesting thing about Arkansas though is so far they don't use Worth in coverage a whole lot.
Mm-mm.
So that's the other thing is they're going to have to ask him to do something that he doesn't normally do against Eli Raridon. So I actually kind of like that. There's 2 ways to look at that matchup, Trevor. One is, hey, I can put size on you that matches up. And the other thing is yeah, but can he run with Eli Raridon? Is he good in coverage? Like if honestly, like if I see Eli Raritan and running a slot fade and that guy's on him, like I'm still throwing it up to him. See if
Oh
that
yeah.
guy can cover. But there's some different things you can do, especially if you're going to be running play action and things like that, where maybe you're trying to get him to bite down and then Eli, gets behind him. So they do have length. And this we talked about yesterday. They do have length. Like their corners are long. They have a 6'2" corner. I would imagine he's going to spend some time on Malachi Fields in the boundary in this game. So the size, they do match up, but so did A&M. A&M had some length at corner as well, and Notre Dame was able to still make plays, and I think that'll be the case in this game as well.
I think so too. My last game record on offense is along the offensive line, which is actually a position group we haven't talked too much about today, Brian. But it's Anthony Knapp. He's going up. He's going to be matched up against Quincy Rhodes. He's their best edge rusher. He's 6'6". He's 275 pounds. He leads the team in sacks, tackles for loss, and pressures. Oh, look. Anthony Knapp has consistently struggled in pass protection this year, and it's a carryover from last year. And unfortunately, I'm out on let's just continue to hold out to see if he gets better. Well, I'm an impatient person, and I'm not waiting until game 35 to see if Anthony Knapp is finally a proficient pass protector at left tackle. With that being said, he is going to have to do a good job of protecting CJ Carr's blind side on Saturday afternoon. Because if I'm Travis Williams, I'm matching up super long number 97 against number 54 in the white and gold and telling him to pin his ears back and go get after the quarterback. There were plays where Anthony Knapp did a good job staying engaged with the defensive end, even if he got beat initially off the snap. With CJ Carr, you just have to be able to give them time. Just have to be able to give him time. And if he's able to do that, then I think in the postgame show, Brian, we're going to be able to sit down and talk about, hey, look, CJ was dealing today. Pass protection took a step in the right direction. But Anthony Knapp is going to have to do a good job of protecting CJ's blind side because Rhodes can come in and put you in a situation where you have to convert a 3rd and 11. He can put you in a situation where he can blow a run play up in the backfield. Like you said, I think they're going to crash their ends pretty hard. And Texas A&M crashed their ends extremely hard. It's a little different when it's 6'6", 275-pound Quincy Rhodes, not 6'2", 245-pound Cassius Howell, who is a good football player. It's just a little different. Speed, length, twitchiness. Anthony Knapp's going to have to have
Cassius Howell plays more into Anthony Knapp's style, though, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I think the misconception a lot of fans have is that Anthony Knapp's not a good athlete. Yes, he is. Anthony Knapp's a good athlete. That's not his issue. It's like athletic guys who can't play corner. Just because you're athletic doesn't mean you can play corner. You have to have a sense of being able to play in space, play on an island, and have that kind of movement in space. And I just don't think Anthony Knapp is good in that area, at least not right now. Cassius Howell's kind of right into his alley. Double moves, slow delays, not really just coming off the edge with speed. That played right into Anthony Knapp's hands. When Anthony Knapp struggles is when the guys just kind of come screaming off the edge or they bull rush him. Yeah. That's where he struggles. And to your point, this is more of a matchup that plays into his weaknesses than one that plays into his strengths. So he's going to have to be a big-time player in this game. No question. And they're going to have a plan that helps him if he can't.
Yes.
So, because that's just the reality of it. I thought I went along the line as well, Trev, with my next game record. And I thought about just going with a lineman, and I thought about going with Billy Schrouth. I thought about going with Ashton Craig. I thought about going with Gerby Lambert. I was going to be settled a little bit on Gerby Lambert, but I'm actually going to make another change. I'm just going to say the interior of the offensive line. Like, I think they are going to have to be good because they're going to try to collapse the pocket, get into CJ's face this way. Rush wide, push him up is kind of what I think they're going to want to do. The run game is going to be very important, being able to get some movement up the middle. If they get dominated, what I said about the Notre Dame defense, like control the middle, is also true for the Arkansas defense. If you can control the middle of the line of scrimmage, it's going to be a lot harder for Notre Dame to run the football. And it's going to be a lot harder for CJ Carr to get comfortable in the pocket with 6'5", 6'6" guys with long arms weighing 330 plus. So the interior is going to have to play really good football. And I thought they're coming off of a very good game against Purdue. They were pretty good against Texas A&M on 90% of the snaps. But those 10% hurt you. You've got to have be pretty good on a higher percentage than that. And if they can do that in this game, then I think that's going to really be a big force for this offense. I think if the interior of the offensive line plays well, there's things I can do to protect Anthony Knapp if he's struggling. There's not a lot I can do if my interior is getting whooped, except just, I don't really have a lot of answers. Get the ball out quick. Let's go quick game. But then you've got big physical secondary players and fast linebackers that can hurt you. So that I think the interior is going to be key. Very, very key. They also bring some really aggressive downhill stunts from their linebackers off hard slants from those big D tackles. They'll slant them D tackles hard and then bring linebackers right off of them. And that's been pretty effective for them at times. But I just think the interior playing well is going to be huge for this team. Huge. Huge. And at the end of the day, Trev, too, also, you need your dudes to be dudes. This needs to be also a game where Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price play well and CJ Carr plays well. But I don't just want to lazily pick those guys every single week. You should just always assume that Jeremiah and Jadarian have to go off and carry this team, and CJ has to carry this team. But they need the complementary players to help them, and that's kind of who my game wreckers are this week.
I'll tell you what, though, man. That interior matchup between Gerby Lambert and one of those big boys is about to feed families. That matchup is going to be nasty.
Yes.
That matchup is going to be awesome. If you like just smash mouth, hard nosed football with how Gerby Lambert's been run blocking, it is so weird to think that they have an interior defensive lineman that has 50 pounds on Gerby Lambert, and Gerby Lambert is 335. That's so crazy. But that matchup is going to be good. Brian, let's talk defensive game records. And again, I'll get us kicked off here. On defense, I'm going to work front to back. And the first one is going to be Boubacar Traore. I think he's somebody that in the run game and in the pass game can be a very, very effective edge player. Setting the run in the run game, setting the edge in the run game is something that I was a little concerned about with him coming into this season, especially coming off of the injury. We knew his ability as a pass rusher. We knew he was twitchy. We knew he was long. But his ability to generate run stops has been a pleasant surprise this year. Not that I didn't think that he could do it. I just didn't think it was going to come on this early in the season with him coming off of a knee injury. So that was impressive. That was really impressive for me to see. So I have Boubacar as my first one. They have two really big running backs. He's going to have to do a good job helping contain Taylon Green, helping squeeze the pocket. And then if Taylon Green does break outside contain, you have 6'4" Boubacar Traore to help chase him down. So he's my first one, Brian. Continuing to before I move back to the next level, who's your first defensive game record?
Similarly, but opposite side. I think we kind of flipped a little bit this week. I'm actually going Bryce Young. I think against the big physical linemen, I think Bryce Young, Josh Burnham, those kind of guys have to have big games.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be important for them. But I think Bryce is going to be what I've said he's going to be, which is flashy. And when you're flashy, there's that game where you're just really good. And Bryce hasn't had that breakout game yet. I think this is a perfect opportunity for him to do that. These are bigger, longer offensive tackles. They're not as athletic as maybe some other teams have at offensive tackle. I think this is a game that if Bryce can kind of come out and play his game, you can go with the Patel Ho. It's kind of like it's an edge player that's got to be a force. And I went with Boubacar last week, and he lived up to that. I mean, he was also my defensive player of the game afterwards. So I'm going to try to will this one into existence as well, like I did Boubacar last week. But I think this is a game where Bryce could really go off, and it could be Patel, it could be Burnham. I just think Bryce and his size and all around ability, I just think he's going to have one of those light goes on games, and I think this will be a good one. So he's my number one in that regard.
Nice. My second one, moving back to the linebacking core, I have Kingston Viliamasa. And he's a player in this game for me that when I look at this, his skill set is going to be very suited in this. And no, that does not mean using him as a spy. It means letting him pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. Kingston is right now your biggest linebacker in the rotation at 6'3", almost 240 pounds. He matches up really well against the bigger backfield that Arkansas brings to the table. Like I said, Mike Washington's a big dude. Braylon Russell's an even bigger dude. We talked in the defensive section about keys to victory, about when you make initial contact, you got to be able to drive them back. And I think Kingston, and of course, along with Drake and Jaden Osbury, if Madden Framo plays again, Jalen Sneed, they're all going to have to do a good job of that. But I think this is the game that Kingston kind of puts himself on the map and really starts to solidify and make the defense start to question, okay, maybe we need to start starting number 27. But I think he needs to be on the field significantly more. But I think this is kind of the game where he puts his stake in the ground and says, hey, I'm somebody that needs to be trotting out with the first team defense. So my second one is Kingston Viliama-Asa. I'm sorry, Brian. I hesitate to ask who you're next.
I feel like Vince. Like, that's how I feel right now. Because Vince would always ask me, and I'd pick a guy. He'd be like, man, I was going to go with that guy. Now I know how Vince feels. No, in all seriousness, it's Kingston. For partly for the reasons you mentioned. I actually went for it in a different manner. I didn't even consider much getting your bigger linebackers on the field. That makes a ton of sense against a bigger quarterback and two bigger running backs. And then letting Jaden be more of the rotation guy in this instance. That makes a ton of sense. But I looked at it more from the standpoint of, if you're going to attack, he's your best attacking linebacker. And I hope that part of them being more aggressive is understanding that, why are we not using arguably our best pass rusher outside of Boubacar to actually rush the passer? So hopefully they can get them into some third down situations, third and mediums, third and longs. And in those instances, let Kingston rush the quarterback. Because the film breakdown that we showed us that right now, Kingston's just not a great coverage player. He's just not. He doesn't have a great – he's not showing a great feel in coverage, which is surprising because he was really good at that in high school. But he just doesn't – there's multiple times he's just got to get up underneath that route, and he doesn't do it. So use it. Use that to your advantage and just let him loose. He's your most natural bender around the edge. I mean, that's not even debatable. And Boubacar's got a better overall repertoire, but Kingston's ability to just bend and get around edges is just really impressive. So run game wise, early downs, I think he can be a force. Pass game wise, I think he can be a force if you use him correctly. The only way Kingston doesn't have a big game against Arkansas is if you don't use him in a way that allows him to have a big game. Like, this is a perfect game for Drake and Kingston to just wreck the offensive line for Arkansas. Wreck it.
Agreed completely. Moving back to the third level, my final game record for this is Tay Johnson at safety. That'll do it here for us today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I think Brian's going to have a talk with me after the show. But no.
I actually love it. I love it because we're on the same page. I love it.
We are, man. We are. Look, I think that Tay Johnson, he has shown that he is your current best cover safety that's in the rotation right now. We have yet to see 11, something that I hope changes. Not betting my rent on it, I guess. But I'm not. Look, Tay Johnson has been somebody that has shown that he is your rangiest safety that's currently in the rotation. We experimented with Jalen Stroman as your field safety. He just doesn't have the instincts that Tay Johnson does. I love Luke Talich. They're just not giving him the opportunities that I think he needs to grow as a coverage safety.
To use him the way they need to use him.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're going to limit Luke Talich's snaps because he didn't do a good job playing center field. Duh. Like, why were you thinking that's what he was going to be good at? Like, oh, we put him in a position to do something he's not good at, and we're mad that he didn't do it, so let's not play him a lot. Okay.
You're telling me that the safety from Wyoming who grew up in high school defending the triple option, and you're not going to use him against the run to fill the alley? You're going to ask him to sit back and play single high? Sure, whatever.
That had 9 tackles in your spring game, has been a starter on special teams for you because of his ability to run downhill, cover, and tackle, is not good at playing center field. Huh? Who knew?
Wild.
Who knew? Yeah.
I'm
with you. I'm with you. I like Tay. I actually had Tay and a Don here for different reasons. I think Arkansas is going to try to find ways to go at Tay because he's still a young cornerback or safety that's made some mistakes in coverage. I think they're going to go at him. I just have a feeling that a Don is going to be a little bit in a I got to show something mode in this game. And if Chris Ash does what I hope he does, all of my picks kind of go together. Here's what I mean by that. If he turns the front loose and he uses Kingston and Drake to attack, and Jaden Allsbury to attack, and Madden and Jalen Sneed to attack the line against the run, get after the quarterback, you're not just going to leave that big giant A smart coach isn't going to just leave this big giant void while they play cover 2 behind it. You're going to, do more single high stuff where you're going to be bringing a Don Schuler down the alley, playing those windows. And that's where I think Don could have a big impact. Lighten up the running backs, making big hits on receivers, but also importantly, the quarterback not seeing him when he's robbing down and jumping in front of some in cuts or over routes and getting to the ball. And then Tay playing center field. I could see Taylor Green floating one up like he did last week against Memphis. And Tay does, that guy's not going to be able to get over there. And then he's like, well, I guess he can, and make some big plays that way. So I think the two of them could be poised to have some big moments in this game. So I actually went with both safeties in this instance. And I think they're going to have a chance to, especially at Don, to maybe make some game-changing plays in this game.
Well, I love pairing them together, Brian. I mean, to your point, I think with Tay Johnson, the more coverage safety in the lineup, that's going to free up a Don Schuler to be what makes him the great safety that he is. The alley filler, the fly downhill guy. Because when you're pairing him and Jalen Stroman up on the back end, Adon then turns into, he has to be the coverage guy in some capacity. I just hope that you're right, and Chris Ash doesn't do what we saw him do on film against Purdue and just rolled Tay Johnson down into the box and just let him sit there. I hope that does not happen, but I'm with you. But that is going to do it for the game records. Brian, we did have some super chats in about the Notre Dame Arkansas game. Did you want to get to those now or wait until
Yeah, we'll do those now. Yeah, we'll do those now. One of them I will hold off on until the recruiting segment we're about to do to talk about Richie Cunningham. Richie Flanagan's commitment. So I'll handle, but a couple of those we'll get to now.
Super chat from Josh Stansberry. Thank you for the super chat, Josh. Jesse Steyer said he expects a Freeman special this game where Notre Dame comes out and just runs the ball. Do you think Notre Dame can score enough points to win against this Arkansas team by doing that?
Can Notre Dame score a bunch of points by running the ball a lot? Yes. Can Notre Dame score a bunch of points by coming out just ground and pound and trying to extend the game? No. They were aggressive against Purdue and ran all over Purdue. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between that and what we saw against Miami of Ohio last year. Both involved running the football. Both involved running the football for a decent number of yards, but they did not involve having an offense that's going to go out there and really focus on attacking and points on the board. So, I mean, Notre Dame ran for 270 yards against Miami of Ohio last year, scored 28 points. That's it. No, that you're not. So if he's talking about a slow the game down, ground and pound, then sure, that's going to be a struggle for Notre Dame, which we've already discussed in this show. If he's talking about can Notre Dame have a game plan where they're aggressively going at Arkansas, I've said it a bunch of times. I think there's a lot of people that don't understand that aggressive doesn't mean you have to throw it a million times. That's not being aggressive. That's a part of aggressiveness can be that. But I thought Notre Dame was very aggressive going after Purdue last week, and they threw the ball 4 times in the first half. You're telling me that was an aggressive go after them game plan? Absolutely it was. They weren't lining up in 12 personnel and just running it down Purdue's throat all game. They were attacking them outside, misdirection, going at them, and then they just couldn't stop it, so they kept going to it. So if you do that, then yeah, you could run. Notre Dame could run for 300 yards this game, and score 40-some points. Absolutely. But if it's ball control, slow the game down, limit possessions, no, that won't go well.
Another one from Josh Stansberry. Appreciate it, Josh. Would you like to see Knapp and Lambert switch positions?
Absolutely. Gerby Lambert in one offensive snap at left tackle last week had the most natural looking left tackle pass set that we've seen since Joe Alt was here at Notre Dame. And that includes last year with Charles Jagsaw. It was the most natural, athletic, balls to your feet, sinking your hips, like length, patience, but also being 6'7" with very long and crazy long arms. Yes, this shouldn't even be a discussion, Josh. This should have already been done, but unfortunately it's not. But I would absolutely like to see that. And then now, here's the thing about that. Gerby is a more natural tackle, in my opinion. Can he play at a high level? Yeah, we're already seeing that. But so could Ronnie Stanley have played guard at a high level in college. Doesn't mean that was his best position. It would also not only allow Gerby to thrive, but it would also allow Anthony Knapp to start playing to his strengths. And I think you could see the offensive line really take off in that instance. No question about it. And then if you did that, and let's say Gerby starts playing really well and Knapp's playing really well, that puts a little bit of a fire under Emil Wagner's butt because, like, hey, man, if you don't figure it out when Charles Jagasol comes back, we're going to have a very long conversation about where we're going to put him. I just think it could be something that could really spark the offensive line. I think there's a 0% chance that happens. I hope that I'm wrong, but I think there's a 0% chance that happens. Really hope I'm wrong. The slight glimmer of hope is that they're not going to put him at left tackle in that situation if they haven't practiced him at left tackle. That I can promise. So they're at least getting him some work there. So we'll see what happens.
Sure
Good
will.
question, Josh.
Super chat from Caleb Pertko. Thank you, Caleb. Appreciate that. Hey, guys, love the show. If the defense plays the same read and react first half with the same results, will Freeman take over or let it happen again?
I would hope that he takes over, but I don't have a lot of faith in that because I just haven't seen him do that. I don't know. I have no evidence of Marcus Freeman saying, screw this, we're taking a game over, game plan-wise. I have no evidence of that I'm aware of. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. For all we know, Marcus Freeman could have said, F this, I'm taking over play calling after the touchdown drive in the second quarter. I don't know that. I wasn't told that. So I don't know that that's the case. I don't know. I don't have evidence of it. Doesn't mean evidence doesn't exist. It hasn't been made known to me. I hope that it doesn't come to that, Caleb, because honestly, if he didn't have that conversation during the week, then we have a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
If that directive didn't come from the very beginning, then why are you waiting until game time to have that conversation? So I think he'll dictate things before he would take over, which is what a head coach should do. Hey, start bringing more pressure now. You can do that and not, screw it, I'm taking over play calling. I don't know that that's always the answer. Because you haven't prepared, unless he's prepared during the week. There's a lot of thought and strategy that goes into calling a game on both sides of the ball. And I don't know that Marcus Freeman's got the track record of coaching that Lou Holtz did when he would just do that. And also the game's very different than Lou would do that when Lou did that. Lou Holtz, Trev, true story. There are games at Notre Dame where Lou Holtz called both sides of the ball because he'd get pissed at his D coordinator and just take over the game and start calling plays. But a game is so much different now, schematically, and it's different now. If you haven't put thought into all week how to call games, you're not going to want to take over against Bobby Petrino. It's, hey man, let's do this. You get on, you get your headset on and you're like, man, if you ever want to call another play at Notre Dame, you need to do this. Like, do that. And then, and if and if you're going to have somebody else call plays, hey Mick, you're taking over. Like, as opposed to him taking over. But I think it's more about dictating to the D coordinator, start bringing more of the things from this section of the play sheet. This pressure package part of the play sheet. I would literally grab the play sheet and I would say, we're not doing this, we're not doing this, we're not doing this. You're doing that. Have fun. If I see you call anything from here, you will be unemployed on before we get to the bus to go home for this game. Win or lose. And then see what he does. That's what I would do.
I'm with you. I am absolutely with you. Well, listen, folks, it's going to do it for part 4 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Don't go anywhere. We got some breaking news. I guess a couple hours removed from the breaking news, but we got some news to report. But until we get there, make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the CFB Nation podcast. I'll be going live tonight for another edition of the Spread Option to cover some of the games that we're going to be talking about a little bit later here on the show. But before we get there, make sure you also subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, the next part of the show on the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. We are going to be talking about a 2027 commitment that just announced. He is committing to the University of Notre Dame, and we are talking about 2027 lineman Richie Flanagan from, I believe he goes to Notre Dame Academy in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yep.
And he is actually, I believe, the younger brother of James Flanagan. So he is now committed to the University of Notre Dame in the 2027 class. He's a 6'3", 265-pound lineman. And I believe Notre Dame outbattled Wisconsin and Duke for this recruitment. Yep. So this is a good pickup for the 2027 Duke. Class.
Also, Michigan was recruiting him for a while. I think they realized that he was going to go to Notre Dame. Had offers from Illinois, Northwestern, Stanford. His offer list did not take off the way that I think it would have, Trev, because I believe that there's a lot of people that knew that this was going to ultimately happen, that he was going to end up at Notre Dame. It was one of those things, if Notre Dame wants him, then they're going to get him, and Notre Dame's always wanted James or Richie. There was never a question about whether or not they wanted him. The only question, and then I think it's still there, is where is he going to play? So the thing about Richie is he's a two-way lineman, and there's been a lot of talk that he could play D-line, he could play O-line. I honestly think that with this commitment, a part of this with Richie is going to be how does the rest of the class fill out, and how does he fill out? He's currently a junior in high school, so he's got the rest of his junior season plus his senior season to fill out his body and grow and develop and fill out and have his game develop and go. So good player. He's a top 250 caliber player. He's ranked at number 222 overall by On3. Listed between 6'3", 6'4", and listed between 6'2.5" and 6'3". He's listed anywhere from 265 to 280. Haven't had a chance to watch his senior film yet. Have watched his junior film or sophomore. I haven't had a chance to watch no one's watched his senior film because he's not a senior. I haven't had a chance to watch his junior film yet. I think they've only played 3 games so far, but he's a good football player. He's a good football player. And I think right now he's more of a natural D lineman, but I could see a world in which offensive line becomes the position for him, like center, guard, something like that down the road. Shocker, everyone. Shocker. A Flanagan is tough and physical and kind of strong. I know that's going to shock some people that watch his dad play and watch his brother play, but yes, he is definitely he is a Flanagan. There's no doubt about that, and he's a good player. We're not going to do like a full breakdown on him right now. We'll do something on him later. We'll do like the backstory and class impact and what's next and all that. But we'll kind of just have some of the film playing while we're doing the show, instead of doing a full breakdown, and we'll do something on Richie here a little bit later, just so people know. But Trev, this is one of those recruitments where it's not really about will he commit to Notre Dame, but more so like when will he commit to Notre Dame is really where this one's been for a while. And you guys will see on the film, quick kid, built very differently than James. James is tall and long. Richie's more short and squatty. Richie's built more like his dad was than how James is. And, if you guys remember Jim Flanagan, who was a teammate of Bryant Young and, actually not even a teammate, a position mate. They were starters on that 93 defensive line for Notre Dame, but real tough kid, physical kid, good short area quickness, as you guys see there. He's a kid that Notre Dame has liked for a while. I think the only question for Notre Dame early on was how big is he going to get? Because Richie isn't like a huge kid, where James was like 6'5" and, ranging athletic and played tight end. There was never a question that James was going to be a dude for you. I think for Richie, it was like, let's see how he fills out. And he filled out pretty well as a sophomore, and he's only getting bigger now. So he got to the point where it's like, okay, this is a no-brainer kid that we want. Has, good length, quality athleticism, and Notre Dame got on him and offered him pretty early and has been on him. He's been on campus multiple times, not just as a visitor with James, but also as a recruit as himself also. So I think this was more of one of those ones, Trev, where it was never really a doubt about whether or not James would commit. It was just when and what position ultimately will end up playing. But I think the fact that he can play both is kind of important. If I had to guess, I would guess he starts on the D-line. As like if they were to say right now, my opinion, where's he going to play? I'd say D-line. But I just think how the rest of the class fills out and how his game fills out and how his body fills out over the next 2 years is going to have a little bit of something to do with that. But there's not a ton of backstory to this one, Trev. It really is. His dad went here. His brother goes here. He wants to go here. if Notre Dame wants him, they're going to get him, and Notre Dame definitely wanted him. And I've actually asked this question, Trev. I'll be honest. I've asked a few people, all right, listen, do you guys really want Richie Flanagan, or is this just more of a legacy kid and you want to do right by his brother and his dad and all that? And the answer was like, oh, absolutely. This is a kid that we like. Where will he be on the pecking order eventually down the road? I mean, that depends on a lot of kids, how they develop and all that. But this is not we're taking him because of who his dad is or who his brother is. They like Richie Flanagan. He's a good football player that this staff likes a lot. So I thought that was important to say, because there's going to be people that are understandably going to ask that question. And this is a kid that Notre Dame wanted, and he, like I said, he's a good football player.
No, I agree. And I mean, when you go and you pop in the film, it's not a mystery as to why. You're absolutely right about his short area quickness. He plays aggressive. He plays fast. Some of the things that we hope to see on Saturday from this Notre Dame football team. But I agree. But Brian, when you dive into the class impact, he's the 4th overall commitment in the 2027 class. He's the 2nd defensive player behind linebacker Ellis McGaskin. He's also your first commit on the defensive line. So he is, he's kind of some of the foundation of what's going to go into this overall defensive class for 2027. And I do like the angle of that. It is a legacy kid. It's somebody that Notre Dame does want. It's somebody that has lineage tying back to Notre Dame. And then, of course, when you go and you pop in the film, it's really impressive to see what he's done so far. But class impact, Brian, he's first defensive line commit. I know that they're far from being done there. I know we'll talk about more of that and what's next, but it's a good pickup.
Even inside, right, exactly. But it's a good foundational pickup too, Trevor, because, again, you've established that first defensive line pickup in the class. You've established a level of, okay, we're going to be a physical football team. I think that last one was an offensive line snap of his. There aren't a lot of offensive line snaps on his highlight film from the sophomore year. So we'll go back and watch that one for him. You can see, obviously, he's an interior guy. But he's the kind of kid that's going to be your grinder, your hard worker, your glue guy in the class at the minimum. He's probably going to be on campus a decent amount. He gives you a good recruiter in the class. And again, he's a top 250 player on 3. So it's not like he's some 3-star kid that nobody's ever heard of, whose dad just happened to go to Notre Dame, and so they're taking him as a thanks to his dad. This is a top 250 football player. Now, will he end up ranked in the top 250? I have no idea. And those rankings are, you know how those things are. Yeah. But this is a kind of kid that you're going to be like, okay, this is going to be a good foundational pickup for your defensive class and for your class overall. I mean, he's probably going to be, more games down the road. This isn't like he's going to make one trip to Notre Dame a year because he lives, 2,000 miles away, right? I mean, this is a kid that, where he lives in Wisconsin's that's not that tough of a drive to get into Notre Dame, and people forget I think you could probably get to the Wisconsin border in like 2.5, 3 hours from South Bend, I believe, Trev, or even a little, depends part of it, maybe a little bit quicker.
It could be a little quicker. Yeah.
But no, I like this pickup. It's a good foundational pickup. And he's a tough kid like his brother. I think he also plays hockey, I believe, like James did. So, like I said, it's good foundational pickup for Notre Dame. Tough kid, and I think class impact wise, you now can focus on your dudes at D tackle. Yeah, you talk about getting a kid like this on the board early. It's like, okay, now we can narrow the board. There's a lot of other kids that we can take off the board, and we can now focus on the studs that are at the top of the board.
You know who he kind of reminds me of when he plays? I know we're just kind of letting the film roll here, but kind of reminds me of a Heinisch. Good short area quickness, more Donovan than Kurt. Kurt was a little bit more of a space eater. Donovan was more of the slasher, and he gave you a little bit more quick penetration. That's who Richie Flanagan kind of reminds me of a little bit here.
You know what's interesting about that, Trev? Regarding how they play at Notre Dame, you're correct. Regarding how they looked in high school, I think he looks a lot more like Kurt did in high school. Kurt, when he committed Notre Dame, was like 265 when he first committed Notre Dame as basically a junior. And then Kurt filled out real nicely and got to be a 300-pounder. I think James is going to be more like Kurt in that he's 265 now. He won't be 265 for very long.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, And he may not even be 265 now. He lists himself at 280 now. So we'll see. But so you're correct on he's built more like Donovan with how they were in college. But I think if you went back and watched Kurt coming out, much more similar style of play than what Donnie was at the same age. So I do like the pickup.
Me too.
It's a good way to start the class.
It is. It is. I know we've already touched on it a little bit, Brian, but let's talk some about what's next. I mean, the 2027 class is just getting started. Like I said, they have 4 total commits. He's your first defensive line commitment, second defensive line commit, or second defensive player commit overall. So where does Al Washington go from here in this class?
Well, when you talk about, obviously, the defensive end class is still wide open. So this doesn't have any impact on the defensive end class. When you look at the D tackle class, as I said, I think what this allows you to do is, maybe some guys that were somewhat on your board, but not sure if you're in love with that guy or not. Those guys may not be as big a takes as maybe they were before. You can now narrow your focus on the impact guys. I think Notre Dame would like to get 3 D tackles in this class. They got 2 in last year's class. They got 2 the year before, but I think that they're going to view, well, we're technically 1 true interior the year before, although I think they always anticipate Gordy Solstead was going to move inside. So I would say 2. And then maybe 3 if Chris Burgess continues to fill out and ends up inside. So I think this year you'd like to get 3. And there's some very talented guys on the board. So one of the super chats we got, and I'll just bring it up now because I think it pertains to the topic that we're discussing, is from Brandon Plensner. Brandon said, is the staff going to continue to push for Parks and Devin Robertson at D tackle? Thank you for the super chat, Brandon. I appreciate that. But yes, my understanding is yes. My understanding is they're going to take 3 D tackles in this class. And those are 2 of the names. Obviously, Braden Parks is an absolute must-get for Notre Dame in this class in a lot of ways. I would argue the same thing about Devin Robertson. I think they're both must-gets in my personal opinion. But I think you definitely need to at least get one of those 2. But there's also some other guys on the board. There's another kid that the Notre Dame staff really likes as an interior player, Sam Lejeune from Mississippi, who's a very talented player, 6'4", 285. He's another guy that they like a lot. Jeremiah Williams from California is another guy, another name to keep an eye on. So there's plenty of guys on the board for Notre Dame right now. Elijah Patman's a kid that's, I don't know if he's on the top of the board, but he's on the board. Jamar Thompson's a kid that they've talked to in the past. I believe they've offered Junior Chilamaka's younger brother. So there's some guys still on the board. This isn't just a, Braden Parks, Devin Robertson thing, but those 2 guys plus Sam Lejeune are the 3 names that I hear most often with Notre Dame, along with Richie Flanagan. Braden Parks to me is a guy that I love that kid's film. And he's a guy that could be a nose, could be a 3 technique. Devin Robertson's more of a pure nose. Those kids can play together. They can also rotate together. Braden's a guy that's having a monster junior season so far, 6'3", 295, 300 pounds, really twitchy, in short area, type of athlete, can be a force, can give you the kind of beef in the middle you want. Devin Robertson's a true nose. He can stuff the run. He can sit there and eat up blocks. But he's also, Trev, you've seen his film, short, low to the ground, fly off the ball. He can be quick. He can penetrate. He's a guy that you look at and say, boy, that's a Southern nose tackle right there, man, because he's strong, he's physical, he plays aggressively, but he's also got some twitchiness to him. Watching him this summer at Irish Invasion, and you get to see that up close and personal, like, okay, this kid's got some really impressive short area quickness. Those 2 guys are guys that I absolutely love. And I think Sam Lejeune's an excellent football player as well. Like, he's a really under-the-radar kid in this class for Notre Dame. He likes Notre Dame a lot. Is it enough for them to get him? That I don't know, Trev. I don't know if it's enough to get him, but it's definitely enough for them to be in the conversation with him. But he's another really talented player that, surprisingly, one of 2 talented players from the state of Mississippi that Notre Dame's after. He'd be an interesting kid to see them get, but he's a really, really impressive player. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch Sam Lejeune yet, but that's another one that you're like, dude, they're after some dudes in the 2027 class at D tackle with Braden Parks, Devin Robertson, Sam Lejeune, and of course Richie Flanagan. So if you get 2 of those 3, and it doesn't matter to me which combination of those 3 you get, I personally would want Braden Parks to be part of that because I love getting those Chicago kids. But if you take that part out of it and you take personal preference out of it, I might like this guy more than the other guy and just say, look, these are A group players for Notre Dame. You take that part out of it. You give me two of Lejeune, Parks, and Robertson to go with Richie Flanagan. That's a heck of a D-tackle class. And it's the kind of D-tackle class that Notre Dame has got to get, in my opinion. So I think they're all three really good football players. And then there's some others. Jeremiah Williams is a kid that I really liked at camp this summer as well. But I think that three, for me, is at the top of the board. And I know those guys are also high on the board for Notre Dame. I just know that there's some other guys on the board as well. But getting Richie Flanagan, like I said, allows you to narrow that scope a little bit and now focus on more of your big boys, knowing that you only need one more. They only need one more D-tackle. They want two more, is my understanding.
I have a question, big picture, and this is going to fall into the category of what's next, but they've gotten a linebacker to help build this class around. They now have their first defensive lineman. Is the next commitment that they're looking for in the secondary on the back end of the defense, or do you just let that happen organically?
What do you mean?
Well, I like they picked up a linebacker commit. They picked up a defensive line commit. They don't have anybody on the back end yet. So that when you're building out a class, is the next person you go get a commitment from in the secondary to help be the foundation on the back
end? It's more organic.
Okay.
It's you have your guys you want. And how quickly do those guys want to jump in the class is really what it boils down to. With your secondary class, you're going after studs like, Xavier Hassan and Josh Dobson and players like that. So those guys tend to take a little bit longer. Just like you haven't gotten Braden Parks yet. You haven't gotten Devin Robertson yet. Your committed D-tackle is a kid that, is obviously a bit of a legacy recruit. And so you've got to be prepared for that, to get that kid earlier. And some of these other guys are, Ellis McGaskin wasn't a kid that they were anticipating committing. He came on a visit this summer, and it was first visit. He just loved it, and he wanted to commit on the spot. They said, go home, think about it, and if you still want to commit, then we'll take your commitment. And he did. And so, that wasn't necessarily the plan. It wasn't like, hey, let's go get Ellis, then we're going to go get a D lineman. Then it's more organic, and it's sort of independent of each other. Like Mickens is like, hey, man, we need to get – this is our number at corner and safety. Go get her done. And it may take longer. It may be quicker than what Max Bulla's task at linebacker is. And it may be different than what Al Washington's task is. If you look at it, I mean, Mike Mickens was kind of at the end of filling up the 2026 class. I mean, Nick Reddish, Joey O'Brien, Kari Adams, and – we're all very much later. Now, they got Chaz Smith very early. They got a surprise commitment from Aiden Pouncey, but a lot of their commitments came towards the end of the recruiting cycle this summer. And then, Max Bulla was kind of done pretty early at linebacker, what I mean? But it was more organic that way. It wasn't like the plan. It's just kind of how it played out. So that's a good question. Good question.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Brian, any final thoughts on the commitment of Richie Flanagan?
It's a good pickup. Again, I got a text today that we thought this was going to happen today. It was supposed to happen a little bit sooner, but I wasn't surprised by it. The timing is always interesting on why kids do certain things at a certain time, but I'm hoping that this can be something that starts a run at the position that, hey, we've got 3 spots. We told you we had 3 spots, and there's more than 2 guys on the board. If you really want to be here, let us know, and so that's where I could even see maybe a D tackle being the next defensive commitment, Trev, because of landing a kid like Richie. Now spots start to fill up. We've talked about this in the past where, guys want to, you get your kind of put up or shut up moment. Guy tells you, oh, coach, I love you guys. And then somebody commits and he's like, yeah, I mean, I love you guys, but I still want to see this process play out. Maybe he doesn't love you as much as you thought he did,
Sure.
And now Or, you're going to take 2 and somebody commits and the kid's like, okay, coach, I'm ready because, I that happened to a receiver this year. There was a kid that wanted to kind of maybe drag his recruitment out a little bit longer, and then class started filling up, and he's like, all right, I'm good. I'm ready to go now, and that'll happen from time to time. And that's when you really know how bad certain kids want to be with you. Because they'll kind of say, okay, my spots are getting limited, coach. I'm ready. Let's do this thing. So that's how I could see that see that going down.
Well, that's going to do it for our coverage of the commitment of Richie Flanagan. But don't go anywhere, folks. We're getting ready to wrap up this show, talk about big picture college football, a lot of the games happening this weekend. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, to wrap up today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, we are talking big picture college football. There's a lot of awesome games going on this weekend, man. A lot. And thankfully, Notre Dame has a noon kickoff, and we hopefully will get to watch some of these as they go down as the day goes on. But look, man, we're going to preview some
what's funny,
games.
Trev? I don't like covering noon kickoffs for just the game itself. It's like you get up and you're immediately like in game mode. And I feel like I'm back in college where we always had 1 p.m. kickoffs, but as far as like a college football fan, I kind of like it better because at the very least we get to watch the 7 o'clock games. Or like the 3:30 games, like you don't get to watch much of the noon game because get to the stadium, and then when the Notre Dame game's over and the late games are kicking off, you're writing articles, you're doing the post game show, and then we don't get to really watch much of the night game. So that is the one positive about the noon kickoff, is that we will get to watch some really good football this weekend after Notre Dame gets that W.
We sure will. First game that we're going to talk about, the Ohio State Buckeyes, the number 1 ranked team in the country, are on the road against Washington in a game where the Huskies haven't lost at home in 3 years. We talked about it. The last time they lost at home was what? The end of 2021?
2021.
Crazy.
Yep.
Absolutely crazy.
Before
but this game
Kalen DeBoer was even their head coach, who's now at Alabama, going into year 2 it was in year 2 at Alabama. Yeah.
This game kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time on CBS. Right now, Ohio State is favored by 8.5 points. The over-under is set at 51.5 on FanDuel. But again, out of the 4 games that we're previewing, this is another one of both of these teams are undefeated. And like we talked about, big implications because Washington has yet to lose at home. I mean, about 3.5 years. That's a crazy run.
Now, Washington's not as good as some of the like they beat Oregon at home, and this Washington team's not as good as that Washington team that beat Oregon. And I would say Ohio State's comparable to that Oregon team, if not better. So this is going to be certainly their biggest test. But what we haven't seen yet, Trevor, is I believe this is Ohio State's first West Coast trip since the Oregon game last year, right? Like that's the only other West Coast trip they've made in this new look Big Ten. And we have seen a lot of these teams from the Midwest not play well when they have to go out West. And we've seen a lot of the teams from out West not play well when they come East. Even USC, who look like world beaters in their, other games offensively, didn't look like world beaters when they had to travel cross country for an afternoon kickoff. So I'm very curious how that's going to go for Ohio State. Ohio State has the better team. There's no doubt about it. But I do think Washington is a team that's capable of upsetting them. It's a very loud environment, Trevor. Very loud environment. And it's one of those places where there's a reason it's hard to win there. And it's not just that it's they're a good football team. I think that they're athletic this year. They're improved on defense. They're not great on defense, but they're improved on defense. But I do think this is one of the few places where I actually think the crowd plays a big role. And I think the travel, obviously it's a long trip, but I think this is a team that is, I think I've said this, a lot of the home field advantages your benefit from, it's just, you're a better team or travel. It's not really because of the crowd. I think this is an exception to this. The thing about this matchup, though, is we don't really know what either team is right now. Texas has, really shut down Ohio State's offense. I say Ohio State's defense has looked phenomenal so far. But they haven't really been super tested yet. I don't think Texas's offense is any great shakes. They've kind of shown that in their games since. They've put up some points, but they haven't exactly looked great doing it. They just have kind of, like, I don't know if you watched any of the Sam Houston State game and they were, first of all, their offense was terrible against UTEP. I thought they just out-talented Sam Houston State. I didn't think they were actually better than they'd been. Didn't play same thing against San Jose State. But they're still talented. But Ohio State's defense is still flat out shut that offense down, like just completely shut it down. And their next two opponents have gone for 347 yards total, but it's Grambling and Ohio. So you should dominate that. But then my counter to that is, yeah, but I watched Ohio almost beat Rutgers on the road, beat West Virginia, and this isn't like some bum Ohio team, and Ohio State dominated them. And then with Washington, I definitely don't know what Washington is right now. They've dominated so far, but they beat Colorado State by 17. They blew out UC Davis, and then they just came off of a blowout win over Washington State. But their blowout win over Washington State was less convincing than the blowout win that North Texas had over Washington State the week before. Washington State's not very good. That's what I think is going to hurt Washington, is the jump from what they've played to what they're about to play is astronomical. Where even though Ohio State didn't play great offensive in the opener, they still have had to go against a really good defense in that opener. So I really feel like this was my summer upset. I don't feel as good about that upset now as I did then because of my uncertainty about Washington. But I'm going to tell you what, Ohio State's going to have a heck of a time with Damon Williams. That kid is fun to watch, and he has been elite so far this season. He's going to be a headache for Ohio State.
We also get our first chance to see Julian Sain in an environment that he hasn't been tested in yet. All 3 games he's played have been at home. And yes, I understand he played Texas at home, but that's a lot different than going to a very loud environment like Husky Stadium in a stadium that they just haven't lost in 3 years. It's a little bit different than playing at home. Not saying that he can't get it done. It's just a different environment than playing Grambling and Ohio. So, Brian, I know we typically give predictions. I'm with you. I think Ohio State is still on upset alert. I do. When you go play at a team that hasn't lost at home in 3 years, I think just by default you're on upset alert. I do. But I do have Ohio State winning this one in what it might actually shock you in more of a low-scoring game than what you might think. Because on one hand, one of the offenses you got Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Max Clare and Brandon Ennis, and the other offense, you have Damon Williams. I like Washington's running back a lot, and I do think this does have the makings though for a little bit of a lower scoring game, because this is by far the best defense that Washington has faced. And this is by far the toughest environment that Ohio State has had to play in so far this season, by far. So I do have Ohio State winning this one, but I have them winning 24-17 on the road.
I also think this is the best offense that Ohio State will have played, with all due respect to Texas. Now, by the end of the year, Texas may have a better offense, but they weren't as good in the opener as what Washington will be right now. That's the point. And, I'm going to stick with my summer. I'm going to get this wrong. I'm going to get this wrong. I'm going to stick with my prediction. I'm going to stick with my upset prediction. And it really comes down to turnovers. I don't think Washington's defense, they're improved over what they were last year. They're still not great. They play better at home than they do on the road. That's just what they've been so far. But I do think that they're opportunistic. And Julian Sain has thrown 3 picks in the last 2 games. He threw 2 picks against Ohio last week. And so he'll put up a bunch, he'll put up yards, but I think those turnovers are something that would concern me a little bit if I'm Ohio State. And Washington's coming off a game in which they forced 3 turnovers against Washington State. Or for Washington, they forced 3 turnovers against Washington State. They've only turned the ball over once so far. Washington has. So I think it's going to be a very, very close game. I think it's going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game than maybe we might think, with Ohio State's offense being able to score and Washington scoring 50 points a game. They haven't played anybody, nothing close like Ohio State's defense. I think it'll be like a 27-24 type of game. And I'm going to take the Huskies in an upset. I know I'm going to probably look stupid on this, but I'm just going to I'm going to stick to my summer prediction about this upset. And I think this is the week that craziness in college football starts.
I could see that,
at
man. I
home.
mean, look, one of the things that I didn't talk about, this is going to come down to Ohio State's ability to run the football.
Mhm.
Truthfully, like I've said before, I've never, ever, ever, ever been worried about Ohio State's passing game.
Nope.
But at the end of the day, they rushed for 77 yards against Texas. And it's not one of those scenarios where they were just, it was a shootout and they didn't have the opportunities to run the football. That was not the case at all. I mean, they averaged 2.3 yards a carry. They had 77 rushing yards on 34 attempts. If Ohio State can't go into this environment and establish any sort of ground game, that's going to open the door for Washington to maybe pull one. So that's why I said they're still on upset alert. But Brian, I like that pick. Next game that we're going to preview and talk about, number 4 Sorry, buddy. Next game that we're going to preview, number 4 LSU on the road at number 13 Ole Miss. This game also kicks off on 3:30. I believe this is going to be the game that follows up the Notre Dame Arkansas game on ABC.
Mm-hmm.
But the Tigers are on the road. Ole Miss is currently favored by 1.5. The over-under is set at 54.5. But look, when a team at home is favored by 1.5, it's basically a pick'em game. So we got the LSU Tigers taking on the Ole Miss Rebels. Brian, talk to us about it.
This is a very intriguing game, Trevor, because LSU is not who we thought they were going to be this season. They're not. Meaning we thought they were going to have this really high-scoring offense and their defense is going to be improved, but still not great, but improved. So far in 4 games, their defense has been outstanding. And their offense has been kind of they kind of finally woke up last week against Southeastern Louisiana, but it's Southeastern Louisiana. They had yet to get to 30 points in a game so far this season. And their performance of getting shut down by Clemson is not looking as impressive when you consider that every opponent that Clemson has played since then has scored more points than LSU has, except for what I think Troy ended up staying at 16, right? They didn't get to that. But it's just one of those things where their offense is gonna have to figure out a way to get rolling. I think this is a defense that should fit well for LSU to be able to get their offense going. Ole Miss is not the same team they were last year defensively, Trevor. They're not bad, but I don't think they're that great. They gave up 23 points to Kentucky. I don't think Kentucky's offense is very good. Arkansas moved the ball up and down the field on them, but they were able to force some key turnovers. But I think they're more they're closer to what they're defensively. They're closer to what we saw against Arkansas than they are in some of the other games. I'm not in love with this Ole Miss defense. So this is a game where LSU's offense should be able to get right, but they're going to have to, because I think that Ole Miss can score. And, again, we're going to see Trinidad Chambliss, a quarterback, I think is what was announced today. There's obviously Austin Simmons still coming back. I think Ole Miss has been able to run the football really well so far this year outside of the Arkansas game. They're going to need to get their run game going against an LSU defense that just honestly has been way better than we thought. They have yet to give up 100 yards this year. And matter of fact, Trev, the most yards they've given up in a game was last week against Southeastern Louisiana, 88. They held Florida to 2.9 yards per carry. They held Louisiana Tech to 2.2 yards per carry, and Clemson was at 1.6 yards per carry. And I know that Clemson's run game still isn't great, but their next lowest output was 120 against Troy. They went for 174 against Georgia Tech and rushed for 140 against Syracuse. LSU held them to 31. This is a much different LSU team than I thought we were going to see. If their offense can figure it out, this is going to make them a very dangerous football team. And I think this is a game where they should be able to start figuring it out. The question is, the counter to that, though, is, Trevor, and I want to get your thoughts on this. This is also the best offense that they will have faced all year, by far. With all due respect to Clemson and Florida, those are bad offenses. They are. This is by far the best offense they're going to face. So we're going to find out just how good LSU's defense is. And I'm not saying that in a way of they're not that good, y'all just don't know it yet. I genuinely am saying they've looked great so far, but this is the game where they truly did tell us how good they really are against this Ole Miss team. Because this quarterback's been legit since he's taken over for Austin Simmons for injury. It's not like you're playing some kid who's never played, never started a game, and hasn't produced at all. This kid's had to play a lot, and he's produced.
We are going to get our first look to see if LSU's defense has finally figured out how to stop a mobile quarterback. Trinidad Chambliss has rushed for 174 yards across the last 2 games. I know they faced Cade Klubnik, and he had like 8 carries for a yard in that game. Obviously, sacks count as carries in college. But Clemson just hasn't really asked Cade Klubnik to run that much. I mean, I think he had like 60 rushing yards against Troy. But they haven't really asked him to be a dual threat quarterback. Clemson's offense right now is super stagnant. And so, yeah, I think that is going to be a deciding factor in this game. I really do, because if Chambliss can make, off-scheduled plays, Ole Miss is at home. LSU's offense doesn't really have an excuse anymore to not have put up more points in my eyes. I understand week 1, you walk away from it's like, well, they were on the road against Clemson. It's like, yeah, I watched Syracuse absolutely rip up Clemson's defense.
Yeah. So did Georgia Tech.
Yeah. So at some point, LSU's offense is going to kind of have to turn it around. It will speak volumes to me if they're able to do it on the road against the top 15 team in Ole Miss. But I do agree with you. This isn't the same Ole Miss defense as we saw last year. I don't think their front 7 is as good as what it was last year. Kentucky, even with turning the football over, was able to move the ball on Ole Miss's defense. Yep. And then obviously we know Arkansas was able to as well. I do have LSU winning this game. I have them winning.
To back up your point, the lowest output they've allowed all season was the 172 that Kentucky had. That's the best rushing output they've had defensively. Mm-hmm. Tulane went for 178. Georgia State went for 191, and Arkansas went for 221.
Yep. I again, I think this kind of has the makings of a high-scoring affair, but it's also if LSU's offense kind of rises to the challenge.
And LSU's offense right now, Trev, is only rushing for 116 yards a game. Their best output of the season was last week against Southeastern Louisiana at 3.9 yards a carry and 135 yards. So, like, it's strange because, like, they can't stop the run, and yet this team can't run. And are they going to put this game entirely on the shoulders of Garrett Nussmeier? Like, I think you're going to need some balance.
Yeah,
I think you will, but it comes down to, can you stop their run game is really going to be the bigger question, because Ole Miss has been able to run the football pretty well for all but the Arkansas game. And like their performance last week against Tulane was impressive, in my opinion. It was a very impressive run game performance by Ole Miss. But this is a much different animal. I mean, we're talking about Tulane. They're a good football team, but they're not LSU.
Nah.
So I've been back and forth on this one a lot, Trev. This matchup has been back and forth. LSU has not beaten Ole Miss in Oxford since 2019, game they won 58-37. Since then, they've played 5 times. LSU has won 3. Ole Miss has won 2. Literally every home team since then is undefeated. So it's been a game where the home team has carried the day. Now, here's the thing about last year's game, though. LSU won that game, but they trailed the entire game. Their first lead was in overtime. And then the year before that, Ole Miss won 55-49 in a shootout. Their last 2 games have been absolute barn burners. And I'm curious if this year changes. So what did you give your prediction yet, Trev?
No, not yet. I have this being somewhat of a more high-scoring game because of that reason. These games have been absolute barn burners recently. I know the offense for Ole Miss looks a little different, and the offense for LSU has yet to take off. But the thing working in LSU's favor is if there's a defense to take off against, it is this Ole Miss defense this year. I do have LSU winning on the road, though, ending that losing streak in Oxford since 2019. So I have LSU winning this one 34-27, seeing it being pretty back and forth. So
I'm 31-28 LSU. Yeah, we see it very similarly. Very similarly.
Next game, Brian, that we're going to preview, we're kicking it over to the Big Ten. We have the number 6 undefeated Oregon Ducks taking on the number 3 undefeated Penn State Nittany Lions in the annual Happy Valley Whiteout game. This game's taking place 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Kickoff is on NBC. Lines from FanDuel, we got Penn State is favored by 3.5 points with the over-under set at 52.5, and yet another undefeated matchup, Brian.
It is, and it's another matchup of teams that haven't really played anybody yet. So we're going to learn a lot about these teams. Penn State's non-conference so far has just been a rugged 3 games against Nevada, Florida International, and Villanova. Just really brutal slate there. I don't know if they're going to have the energy to take on this game. And Oregon State's been tested more, but still not tested much. They played Montana State, Oklahoma State, Northwestern, and Oregon State. Significantly tougher test than Penn State, but still not much of a test so far this season, Trevor. And it's going to come down to, I think Oregon has been more impressive so far, but how good is their defense really? Like, that's the big question that I have about this matchup, Trevor, is so far on paper of what they've done so far this season, Oregon's defense has been legit. I mean, they haven't given up more than 14 points in a game. They held Montana State to 13. Montana State's usually a pretty good FCS team. They held Oklahoma State to 3, gave up 14 to Northwestern, and only 7 to Oregon State. But none of those teams are very good on offense. And so it makes you wonder kind of who they are. Oklahoma State's only scoring 14 points so far. Northwestern's at 19.7. And then Oregon State's averaging a whopping 15.8 points per game. So, like, how tested are either one of these teams really? I'll say this, Dante Moore has looked very good so far, completing almost 75% of his passes, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, averaging 10.1 yards per attempt. He's been as good as advertised. And the interesting thing about Oregon is Mekhi Hughes has only got 70 rushing yards on 17 carries through the first 4 games. He is their 6th leading rusher. And I believe he's been a little banged up, but he's played in every game so far, Trev. 2 of the games he only carried the ball once. So, again, I think it's about kind of getting him back healthy. But former Notre Dame commit, Jaden Lamar, is their leading rusher so far. He's got 215 yards through 2 games. But they have 3 guys over 150 yards and 6 guys over 70 yards rushing the season. So it's been a spread-out attack. You're going to have to find some answers running the football in this game. You're going to have to find a way to maintain a level of balance in this game. Because if it's just up to Dante to go on the road and sit back and throw the ball 40-plus times and carry this team, I don't know how that's going to go. You're going to have to be able to find some balance against what I think is a pretty good Penn State defense. I think. We don't really know because I haven't played anybody in an incredibly embarrassing non-conference schedule, but still, they're only getting up 17 points in those 3 games, Trev, against Nevada, Florida International, and Villanova. Florida International is averaging, or Nevada's averaging 15 points a game. And FIU is averaging 24 points a game, boosted by a 42-point output over Bethune-Cookman. They scored 16 points in a 38-16 loss to Delaware. So, again, we don't know how good either one of these teams are. I think it just comes down to can Penn State handle Oregon's speed? That was the issue in the Big Ten title game, and that's still the question now. And then is Oregon's defense good enough to stop the Penn State rushing attack? That's my other question. That's going to determine this game.
This game for me comes down to quarterback play. What takes the day? Is it Drew Aller, the vet, the highly touted NFL, prospect, or is it the younger and exciting Dante Moore? Because here's what we know. Dante Moore hasn't performed that great on big stages when he was at UCLA. Now he's 2 years older. But so far, when he's been the starter at Oregon, he hasn't played in rough environments. The hardest environment he's played in at Oregon is on the road against Northwestern. We don't know how he's going to look. So that advantage goes to Drew Aller. However, Drew Aller this year has been poo against really bad opponents. That dude has a QBR of 38.3 against Nevada, FIU, and Villanova. That's not good. It's just flat out not. CJ Carr has outperformed Drew Aller this season, and that's been playing Texas A&M at home at night, Miami on the road, and Purdue at home. What takes the day? Is it the younger up-and-coming Dante Moore, or is it the seasoned vet? Now, I know there's other supporting role things, but Drew Aller has yet to win that big game, and we kind of have yet to see Dante Moore play in that big game. So the quarterback play in the really intriguing for me, Brian. Really intriguing.
Trev, look, it's one thing for you to take my picks, but you keep stealing my word. You keep stealing poo, and we're gonna have to have to talk about it. You gotta let me have something, man. You gotta let me have something. Okay. You gotta let me have poo. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, both of these non-conference schedules have been embarrassing, but Oregon's looks like a gauntlet compared to Penn State's.
Yeah.
And even against those teams, we have just not seen this Penn State offense really look great.
No.
Now they put up big numbers against Villanova, but I mean, I watched the Nevada and the FIU games, and even running the ball, like they put up good numbers rushing in those games, or I mean in the Nevada game, or the FIU game, but it took them a while to get going. I mean, it really did. And now part of that could just be a lack of focus, but they picked it up and they ran the ball well that week, and they ran the ball well last week against Villanova. But like their running game was not nearly as impressive against Villanova as what Notre Dame's was against Purdue, a Big Ten team. So I really don't know what to think of Penn State at this point in time, Trev. And I think that if I had more of evidence that Dante could thrive in this environment, I'd be more willing. I think honestly picking Oregon would almost be a no-brainer. But I just can't keep going away from the fact of how just kind of not great that Oregon looked last year whenever they traveled east for a regular season game. The only game that I remember them going on the road and heading east last season and really looking great was the Big Ten title game against Penn State on a neutral field. I mean, they almost got beat by Wisconsin last year. They did not look great at all in beating Purdue. I mean, it was one of the least impressive beatdowns that Purdue took last year. You know, they won 35-0, and it was just like ugly. They played Michigan. They were good against Michigan. I'll give them that. They were good against Michigan last year offensively, but almost got beat by Wisconsin. And just we haven't really seen them. I mean, even the Northwestern game, they won 34-14. They didn't even get to 400 yards of offense in that game. Like, I wasn't blown away with how Oregon looked in that game. I really wasn't. So I'm going with Penn State just because I have seen Penn State be very hard to beat at home by everyone not named Ohio State. And I just don't know that Dan Lanning has earned that trust from me yet. We have seen him go on the road against good teams and not play well. Hence part of the reason that Washington is not lost since 2021 because Dan Lanning couldn't beat him there. So I don't feel good about it, Trevor. Taking Penn State in this game, I'm going to take Penn State 27-24. I don't feel great about it. I'm sorry. 30-27, excuse me. But I don't feel great about it. I think it's going to come down to Penn State's defense is going to force a couple turnovers, and they're going to wear down the Oregon defense in the second half running the football. That's really what it comes down to for me. But I don't feel great about this prediction. I don't. And that's what makes it hard when you have two teams that haven't played anybody. You really don't know what they're made of yet.
I have Penn State winning this one as well, and it's going to come down to if Oregon can stop the run. I understand that Penn State's rushing offense hasn't looked like what it's supposed to against really bad competition, but you could make the argument that Oregon's rush defense has looked kind of even worse. I mean, they allowed 198 rushing yards to Montana State. You know, they allowed 144 rushing yards to Oklahoma State. Not bad. They gave up 178 rushing yards to Northwestern. They shut down Oregon State's rushing attack, but Oregon State's really bad. So I'm going to be very interested to see how they handle Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen.
They didn't give up. They only gave up 46 rushing yards to Montana State.
Maybe I was looking at what Oregon did.
Yeah. They gave up 198 passing yards to Montana State.
That's probably what I looked at.
Yeah. Then. You probably thought that you were looking at rushing numbers because they only allowed 67 passing yards to Oklahoma State and only 80 passing yards to Oregon State. Their pass defense has been insane so far this season. But your other numbers were correct, Trev. They did not look great against Oklahoma State. There were times early in that game where Oklahoma State was gashing them a little bit. They started shutting down the run when the game got out of hand. But a couple of the early drives that Oklahoma State put together were built around running the football, just kind of right at Oregon, to your point. And like you said, Northwestern ran for 178, almost 5 yards a carry, and they're not good. Northwestern's not good, Trev, this year on offense. They're averaging 19.7 points per game. And scored 3 points against Tulane. They scored 14 points against Oregon. That's 11 less than what they had against Tulane.
Well, and it's also goes back to that conversation. Show me the last big game that Oregon has played in and has been able to stop them. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what it relies on for me. And yes, I understand that Drew Aller hasn't been playing well. And
which coach who hasn't been great in top 10 games are we going to go with in this game? I mean, because you could point to the Ohio State game last year, and that was a good win for Dan Lanning, but he's had a lot more disappointing performances in situations like this than he's had great games in situations like this. And we know James Franklin's track record in games like this. That's why for me, it's just I'm going with the home team. That's really what
I don't blame you, man.
That's just kind of where I'm at.
I mean, I'm picking Penn State for a lot of what you said. They're the home team, and they do have the more experienced roster. They do. Oregon's talent is really exciting, but it's also really young. You know, James Franklin hasn't been great in ranked opponent matchups, but he has more experience in them than what Dan Lanning does. Yeah. And then obviously on defense.
So does Drew Aller.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's Drew Aller.
I don't have a final score prediction, but I do have Penn State winning this one because, like, for the reason we talked about, I just couldn't even tell you how this one's going to pan out. I'm just erring on the side of more experience at quarterback, more experienced total roster. So, but would it shock me in their
lines? I've seen their lines play in bigger moments. Like most of their linemen, they lost Abdul Carter, but their offensive line, I've seen their offensive line in games like this.
Yeah,
I've seen their defensive line outside of Abdul Carter step up. I've seen Zane Durant in big moments. I've seen Denai Dennis Sutton in big moments play well. I don't know that I've seen Oregon's defense play well in a big game, including the Ohio State game last year.
Yeah, I mean, including
the Big I didn't think Ohio State played very well. Like, Trev, in the regular season game, I didn't think Ohio State played very well and still almost won.
Yep. I mean, they didn't play well against Penn State in the Big Ten championship. I mean, it's just, you know.
Their defense.
I'm with you.
Right, exactly,
Yeah, I'm with you completely. Final game that we're going to take a deep dive into here, Brian. Number 17, Alabama is on the road against number 5, Georgia in Athens. Night game kickoff, 7:30 p.m. on ABC. ABC has a fun slate of games.
Yes.
I mean, they get Notre Dame at Arkansas, then they get LSU at Ole Miss, and then they wrap up the evening with number 17, Alabama at number 5, Georgia. Mm-hmm. Right now, Georgia's 2.5-point favorites. Over-under is set at 52.5 on FanDuel. Alabama is actually the only team with a loss of the 4 games that we're kind of deep dive previewing, which is interesting. But
they're also, I think, the only team that's played anybody outside of LSU.
Georgia played Tennessee.
No, I'm talking about the previous games.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
The previous games. I'm talking about Oregon, Penn State, who haven't played anybody.
Ohio State played Texas.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So
continue,
which is interesting. But point being, this is a big matchup and a rematch from last year. Is this finally the year that Kirby Smart can overcome the Alabama bug? Can he finally find a way to beat Alabama? The stars are aligning. Alabama isn't what we thought that they were going to be, albeit they had a decent bounce back against Wisconsin, who's also really bad. And Georgia beat Tennessee, I believe, on the road, right?
Yep, it was at Tennessee.
Which was an impressive win. So, Brian, how do you see this one shaking out?
You know, I knew Tennessee was going to let me down in my prediction. I thought I had it, and then Tennessee'd. They gave that game away, in my opinion. Actually, I'll tell you, Trev, I think this is going to be a great game. I think this is 2 of the better teams in college football. You know, I still have some concerns about Georgia personnel-wise in certain spots, and I think all the concerns that we had about their defense were proved to be very valid in the game against Tennessee. I think those things are proved to be like this defense in the secondary. They've got some issues in the secondary. Tennessee passed all over them, just threw all over them. Joey Aguilar ate them up. With all due respect to Joey Aguilar, they're not the Alabama pass offense, in my opinion. But what Georgia was able to do is make key stops. And what Georgia was able to also do is get their offense rolling. And Gunnar Stockton made that throw he made to, I keep wanting to say Ladd McConkey. It's not Ladd McConkey. Landon Humphreys was an absolute flipping dime. I mean, just dropped it over the outside. So you know what I'm talking about, a touchdown throw? Like that was an absolutely gorgeous throw. And the other thing, too, is Georgia's run game is starting to look a little bit like the Georgia run game. It's not great. They didn't rip off a bunch of big runs against Tennessee. They only averaged 3.6 yards a carry, but they stuck to it. They ran 55. Now, I know there were some scrambles and sacks in there, but like 55 attempts. They stuck with it. They kept pounding the rock. They didn't go away from it. They didn't start to get pass happy. They said, look, we're going to have to slow this game down, get physical, and then take some big shots down the field. I think that's where their offense needs to be. That's who Gunnar Stockton needs to be, is let him counter off of the run game, being physical, and then let him take some shots and make some big plays. He was outstanding, in my opinion, against Tennessee, but I don't think Tennessee's as good as Alabama. And that's going to make this a very interesting game. But now they're not on the road. They're at home. And to your point, on the other side, Alabama's looked phenomenal since they lost to Florida State. And so now we have to find out, like, okay, is Alabama that good? Or is it more so that they just played Louisiana Monroe and Wisconsin in the 2 games since? I think, that's again where it can be a challenge this early in the season. I will say this, look, Wisconsin's not very good on offense. Their offense is absolutely dreadful, but their defense, Trev, has not been that bad. I mean, they held Maryland to 326 yards. They've yet to give up a 100-yard rushing performance by a team. Matter of fact, Alabama's 72 yards, the most they've allowed all year. I mean, Alabama passed for 56 more yards than what Maryland had in total offense in that game. And then they held Miami to no points, Middle Tennessee to 10 points. So Wisconsin's defense has been pretty good. And honestly, Alabama could have hung 50 on them if they wanted to. And I thought they definitely called the dogs off in that game. So I think that's what makes this a little bit interesting, is it's about matchups, right? And Alabama is looking more like Alabama was supposed to look in the 2 games since, against far inferior opponents. You and I talked about how I was very disappointed in just the body language of Alabama's receivers outside of Jeremy Bernard in the opener. Well, Ryan Williams is starting to look like Ryan Williams again. But again, that's against Wisconsin and Louisiana Monroe. So I will say this, Trev. I think this is going to be a very entertaining game. I think that Georgia has some matchup advantages in this game in areas where I don't think Alabama's been great so far this season. I think that Alabama has some advantages in areas that I don't think Georgia's been very good so far this season. I think Alabama's very vulnerable on the run. I don't think holding Louisiana Monroe and Wisconsin to 92 and 93 yards really does a whole lot to settle my can they stop the run conversation, because Wisconsin's rushing attack is terrible. Because you remember how I was throwing numbers against Maryland? Well, they rushed for 92 yards and 2.7 yards per carry against Alabama. Good job, Bama. The next week against Maryland, they ran for 61 yards and 1.5 yards per attempt. They can't run the football. And so how good is Alabama really? I don't know, because if Georgia can be balanced and hit some shots down the field, which I think Bama's still vulnerable to big plays down the field, that's how Alabama is going to be successful. But what Alabama showed me is that emotionally they bounce back well and are starting to play a little bit more fire. I think they're going to be a much more confident football team coming into this game than what I think we saw against Florida State. But how long does that last if Georgia punches them in the mouth a little bit early? That's what's so interesting about this game, Trevor, is I think Georgia's offense has found a rhythm against Tennessee, although I don't think Tennessee's offense or defense is all that great this year. But Georgia's defense is, in my opinion, Trevor, is not as good as it's been in the past. And I think that was evidence in the Tennessee. That was the first real offense they played all year. And they got shredded. So how are they going to be this week with a bye? We'll see.
Yeah, we sure will. I mean, a lot of this, again, I've talked a lot about quarterbacks today, but this is going to come down to how well can Ty Simpson perform on the road. Because I watched him perform on the road against Florida State, and he gave the look.
Yeah.
He was absolutely rattled.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if that's because they overlooked Florida State. It was like, yo, this team was 2-10 last year. They're dog water. They're not good. Like, we're Alabama. We're the second year of Kalen DeBoer. Let's do this. They jump all over him, and Ty Simpson had kind of like the deer in the headlights look. I don't know if he's going to be shocked if the number 5 team in the country kind of punches him back in the mouth a little bit.
Right.
I think it's going to come down to the performance of Ty Simpson for Alabama, the performance of Ty Simpson, and can they run the football? Ty Simpson was your leading rusher against Wisconsin. In the 2 Power 4 games that you played, you combined for 159 rushing yards. Yes, you have Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams and Isaiah Horton, and your skill positions are really awesome. But I have a similar conversation about Alabama that I do about Ohio State. In big matchups, are you able to run the football? And I'd be willing to bet that this Georgia defense is not going to let Ryan Williams do what he did to them last year in Tuscaloosa. If you do, that's just an epic failure. It is. And if I'm Georgia, you got to find a way to get stops on defense.
Yeah.
Have to find a way to get stops on defense. They've been running the ball a little bit more effectively. Gunnar Stockton has to continue taking care of the football, be who you have been on offense. But it's going to be all for naught if you're just Swiss cheese on defense and letting Alabama get 500 total yards of offense and score 40 points. Because I don't think that Georgia's offense is set up in a way. I understand what they did against Tennessee, but I don't think Georgia's offense is built to be in a shootout with a team like Alabama that has Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton. And so that's kind of the task at hand here. It is, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
I'm glad you said that, Trevor, because I definitely think they're in a position to where they can score enough to win this game, but not if the game looks like last year. Not if it's a shootout where you've got to throw the ball 50 plus times and throw it all around the field. I don't think that they're good enough to win that way. Now, I could be wrong, but that's just kind of how I feel about this particular matchup. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Very interesting to see, Trevor, if they're able to kind of to play at that level. I think the thing that makes Alabama a difficult matchup is, they didn't have Isaiah Horton. He got hurt very early in the Florida State game. And as you mentioned, I don't know what was going on with Ryan Williams in that game. He missed the Louisiana Monroe game and came back against Wisconsin and looked like Ryan Williams. But their best receiver so far this year has been Jeremy Bernard. And then, Isaiah Horton has played the last 2 weeks. He's had 8 catches for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns the last 2 games. So he's kind of getting into the rhythm of the offense. But as you mentioned, are you going to be able to beat Georgia playing one-dimensional football? Because I don't think they're going to run on Georgia. They're not going to run on Georgia. There's nothing about this football team that makes me even think they want to run the football, much less can they run the football. And can you really go into Athens and beat Georgia in a game where you're not balanced even at all? You're just going to drop back and throw the ball 40 times and okay, let's see how that goes. My thing is, Trevor, I think that here's what the game's going to come down to for me. I absolutely think that if Ty Simpson gets time to throw the football, he will eat Georgia's defense alive. He will throw for 300-plus yards, and he will get after it, and he will do all those kind of things, and he'll look like $1 million. But can he get time to throw the football? That's a big question because we have not seen them play a defense worth a darn since their opener. And I didn't think they were necessarily great protecting him against Wisconsin. I thought he was just they're not athletic enough on the perimeter. He would scramble and find guys open where against Florida State he couldn't. They gave up 11 pressures in that game, Alabama's offensive line, including 4 hits plus sacks on the quarterback against Wisconsin. And that was after in the opener giving up 16 pressures and 3 hits plus sacks on the quarterback against Florida State. That's going to be a big part of this game for me is if it comes down to if Georgia can't get after the quarterback, they're going to get beat and they're going to get beat bad. Because like you said, I don't think they can win in a shootout. But I don't know that I have a ton of faith right now in Alabama's able to protect the quarterback. Can they protect him against, Raylan Wilson and Chris Cole and Gabe Harris? Now, Georgia hasn't exactly been a great team at getting after the quarterback this year. In 3 games, they've only had 33 pressures, and they've only had 5 sacks plus hits on the quarterback. And that's why Tennessee shredded them because they couldn't get to the quarterback enough. That's what's going to make this fascinating. I think Tennessee's been a little better in pass pro so far this season than has Alabama. That's what the game's going to come down to is can Georgia get after the quarterback and disrupt Ty Simpson like Florida State did, or are they going to struggle to do that like they did against Tennessee, when they got ripped apart by Joey Aguilar and that receiving core. What's going to happen when you face this quarterback and this receiving core?
One of the other last thing for me about this game, one of the unsung parts about this game is, can Alabama stay disciplined? I just went back and looked. Alabama has been penalized more than every team that they've played. Like I don't know what you call the penalty battle or whatever you call it, but they've been penalized more than every opponent they played. That includes Louisiana Monroe. Their inability to maintain discipline, and I'm not talking like they're getting, after the whistle penalties, like to just be the false starts, holds, offsides, pass interferences. It's absolutely killed them this year. Georgia, on the other hand, has been a relatively disciplined football team. I mean, they 2 penalties total against Marshall, 3 total against Austin Peay, and then 5 against Tennessee compared to Tennessee's 10. I know it sounds a little weird to bring that stat up, but it's like in a game that could be this close in prime time, that could be a huge difference. Yep. That could be a big difference between Alabama sustaining a drive and then putting themselves in a spot where they're on the road and they are able to let Georgia pin the ears back and it's a 3rd and 12. That's wild.
To your point, Trevor, here's some data. Georgia right now ranks 5th in college football, tied for 5th with Wisconsin in fewest penalties per game, 3.3. Georgia is also 5th, right behind Notre Dame, in fewest penalty yards per game. Alabama, on the other hand, ranks 83rd in the country with 6.7 penalties per game, and they rank, 92nd in most penalty yards per game. In a road game against a team like Georgia, to your point, that could be the game. Like early in the, I think it was Ty Simpson was like 1 throw away from tying the most straight completions record. You remember that?
Yeah.
And I think he actually hit a pass to tie the record, and it came back because of a penalty, and then the next pass went incomplete. I think that's how that. But they had a penalty that messed up that series. And you can shoot yourself in the foot when you're playing Wisconsin and Louisiana Monroe. You're not going to be able to shoot yourself in the foot when you're playing Georgia on the road. Yeah. So that's what makes us where Georgia's really good, Bama's not. Where Bama's really good, Georgia's not. Which is, I think, whose matchup advantage wins this game. And to your point, I could see it now. You hit a 40-yard bomb for a touchdown on 3rd and 5, and it gets called back because of holding. You're not going to do that twice to Georgia. You get that one crack at it. But I think at the end of the day, I'm still going with I still have some questions about Georgia's offense. And you mentioned it too, Trev. Can they win in a shootout? I don't think that Georgia has the pass rush that you need to have to disrupt a team like Alabama enough. And when it comes down to their secondary, I just don't think their secondary is very good. I don't. They've got some really good athletes. Georgia does. Obviously they've got talented safeties. I've said it before. I still feel that way. I'm not in love with their corner play. And then watching Tennessee just eat them apart, Trev, just says, boy, I don't know how that's going to look going against Alabama. I really don't. So I'm going to go with Alabama in this game, winning 34-31. I think it's going to be a very close game, as it usually is. But I just think that Georgia's not going to have enough firepower on offense to win this game. Not quite enough. They are better at receiver this year than they were last year. There's no doubt about it. They're getting, and not even just the transfers, but they're finally getting Landon Humphreys more involved in the offense, and their tight ends are still really good. But I think Alabama. I've liked what I've seen from Alabama the last 2 games, but it could also just be confirmation bias since I was very high on them coming out. Like, okay, that's the Alabama I thought I was going to see against Louisiana Monroe and Wisconsin, who aren't very good. So it's going to be interesting. Did watching Georgia just get ripped up like that give you pause about this? Not in this matchup, but just about that team, or did you just kind of chalk it up to just one of them days in the SEC on the road?
I would say a little bit of both. I mean, I think it was – I don't know what that game told me more about. Did it tell me more about Tennessee's offense or Georgia's defense? We'll see. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I mean, we spent the first part of the show talking about how difficult it is to go win at Washington. It's also really hard to go win down in Athens. For the concerns that I have about Georgia's defense, I don't know what I'm more concerned about, their secondary or Ty Simpson's ability to handle the moment. And yes, I understand you kind of have to look through the weeds a little bit, that Wisconsin in some aspects may be a little bit better than what we think, but I just still think Wisconsin sucks. I do. Like, there's no way
They do.
around it.
They absolutely suck. They are decent on defense, though. They have been good on defense this year.
Agreed. But
I'm trying to find the last time Georgia lost at home. I know it's been a while.
I looked it up real quick, and it said 2019 against South Carolina in double overtime. But
I remember that. Yeah.
So that
South Carolina sucked that year. Yeah, it was a couple weeks after they played Notre Dame. Yeah, I actually went look 3 weeks after they played Notre Dame. Yeah.
So that might be it. Yeah. But I don't – on paper, I love Alabama's skilled talent. But if they're not able to establish a ground game on the road against a team like Georgia, that's going to seal their coffin. And so far this season, they haven't proved to me that they can establish the run against a Power 4 opponent. And Ty Simpson, albeit it was one sample size in week 1, hasn't shown me that he's able to handle that moment. And I don't know if the moment gets much bigger than the SEC at night in Athens, Georgia. And so I'm going with the Bulldogs in a close game. I think they get a little bit of revenge from last year. But again, like all the games that we previewed, Brian, it would not surprise me in the slightest if Alabama wins this.
Yeah. Just that's like what I love about this weekend, Trevor. These are great matchups. Like, I mean, these have a chance to be all great games.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely great games where you're like, boy, that was two really good football teams.
Yep.
Like that's what this could be. Yeah, we're going to see. And I don't think that what we saw last year from Georgia against Alabama makes me feel warm and fuzzy about their ability to somehow figure it out this year. I mean, they got ripped up by Jalen Milroe last year throwing the football. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not 28-0. I don't know, man. You can say what you want about Ty Simpson, but I know Jalen Milroe could throw the ball last year, and they got ripped up by Jalen Milroe. It's going to be a fun weekend of football, man. And there's some other games, Trev, just kind of, real quickly. Tonight or tomorrow night, TCU and Arizona State for, battle for supremacy in the Big 12 is going to be an interesting game. How does Illinois bounce back against USC? And then how does USC handle traveling east? You already see Lincoln Riley pissing and moaning about, not liking the start time. And I'm like, well, buddy, you joined the Big 10, so I don't want to hear you crying about it. You don't think you're going to play noon games on the East Coast? You're getting special favors? Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on, man.
Well, he was talking about we get the latest kickoff slot. It's like, buddy, you played at home. It was 8 p.m. your time.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah. All right, dude, you can miss me. You didn't kick off at 11 p.m. Pacific time.
Exactly. Exactly. Don't join an East Coast league if you don't want East Coast kickoff times, okay? I'm just saying. But that's going to be an interesting game. Here's an interesting one, Trevor. Who is Louisville? Like, they're 3-0. They've played nobody, but they've looked okay in those 3 games. They had one game. Oh gosh, who was it against? They had a really ugly win in week 2, I believe, or week 2. Yes, over James Madison. They were kind of just down early and didn't look great, but they looked good in the fourth quarter. JMU's been good in the other games. I mean, how good's JMU? We don't really know. I thought Louisville bounced back pretty well the next week against an inferior opponent. But, I mean, so far their toughest opponent is James Madison. They went and beat Bowling Green, who's been, scrappy this year under Eddie George and Drew Pine. Blood Eastern Kentucky, I don't know how good they are. And then, Pitt, they've been good this year in a couple games. But then I thought they looked like – I still can't believe they got beat by West Virginia. Like, West Virginia's not good this year. And, so that'll be an interesting game, but it's more so I don't really care about the game as much. Obviously, it has implications for Notre Dame, but this is our first chance to see if Louisville is going to be a team that can maybe contend with Miami and Florida State in the ACC this year and Georgia Tech or not. Auburn, Texas A&M is an interesting game. I'm very curious to see how Texas A&M bounces back from their big win over Notre Dame. How does Auburn bounce back from their loss to Oklahoma is going to be intriguing. So there's a few games. Indiana, Iowa is another one too. Is Indiana really this good? Because if they're this good, then we're going to find out how good their offense is this weekend. If they rip up Iowa, then I'm going to be like, all right, I'm a believer. They're a contender. Like, they're a legit contender.
One game that I'm keeping my eye on that's kind of flying under the radar a little bit, and I understand why, because it's the 2 teams, but just implications for the ACC. Cal plays Boston College. How does Boston College bounce back after a 10-point loss to Stanford? They had a bye week to kind of get their mind right. And then Cal started off the season 3-1. I mean, they got the doors blown off of them against San Diego State last weekend. But, bro, did not have it on my bingo card that Cal was going to start off 3-0 after at one point in the offseason, a couple months ago, they didn't have a running back on their roster.
Like they literally lost every single scholarship running back they had, yes.
And then after Boston College plays Michigan State, hangs over 40 points on them in East Lansing, plays Stanford, and loses by 10.
Who's not good.
No.
As I'm watching, like, Trev, I got to be honest with you, man. As I'm watching Ben Branson throw the ball on Boston College, like, dude threw for 186 yards. Now, keep in mind, for Ben Branson, that's like a 350-yard performance for anyone else. As I'm watching him go 13 for 22, and as I'm watching Stanford run all over Boston College, I'm thinking Notre Dame could score 70 against that defense. Like, their defense is bad. Bad. You can use the word, Trev. It's poo. It really is. Their defense is bad. That's going to be an interesting. And how do you go 3-0? How do you beat Minnesota by 2 touchdowns and then go get smacked by San Diego State? Like, that's just, you're just not a good football team at that point in time. Yeah. Another interesting ACC game is I'm curious to see how Syracuse looks without Steve Angeli. Can Ricky Collins kind of take that over and right the ship? Duke is a 4.5-point road favorite over Syracuse. Like, they're really chalking this up like Syracuse was just the Steve Angeli show. I was shocked when I saw that spread. Duke, who's 2-2 and lost a Tulane in Illinois, got blown out by Illinois. They're a 4.5-point favorite at Syracuse because they don't have Steve Angeli? Like, I mean, really? Steve's playing great. This isn't a shot at Steve. It's like, really? You think Syracuse is just going to fall off the earth because they lost a quarterback? They lost a quarterback last year, replaced some Steve Angeli. He kept doing what last year's quarterback did. You know, like, I think Ricky will be okay. I was a little surprised by that line. I'm very curious to see how Syracuse bounces back. I hope they bounce back. And I hope Steve is able to heal up and get back to it next year. The cool thing is he's going to be able to apply for – he got hurt early enough where he can apply for medical redshirt. So now Syracuse could still get him potentially for 2 more years because he had a normal redshirt in 2022, played 22 and 23. So he's this year a redshirt junior. But he had a injury in game 4 for them, right? Game 4. So that's the cutoff. So he'll be able to petition for a 6th year of eligibility because of the medical hardship and potentially have 2 years of eligibility left for him. So that's the only ray of sunshine in the otherwise disappointing injury is that. So it'll be interesting how that goes. Any other games, Trev? I know the Tennessee-Mississippi State game, we hinted about that one yesterday. Any other games that you've got your eye on for this weekend of college football? NC State really needs a bounce-back win. That was a bad loss. I want to see how Florida State handles going on the road. They're only a 6.5-point favorite at Virginia. There's some respect being given to Virginia's offense when I see a line like that, Trev.
Yeah.
Like, I was expecting them to be a 17 to 20-point favorite in that game, but they're not. But, yeah, it's another one. It's definitely another one. Georgia Tech's got to avoid that dumb upset at Wake Forest this weekend. Like, that game has me a little nervous. Like, not that they should blow Wake Forest out, but, you know, Georgia Tech just kind of had that, what happened to you type of game, like every year they have games like that. Mm-hmm. That's another one that I have my eye on. And for my guy Dan, my prediction for UCLA Northwestern, he asked me if we were going to predict that game. And my prediction, Trevor, is they're going to set back offensive football 30 years. That's my prediction.
About to say, a prediction.
How bad do you have to be a Power 4 team that's a 6.5-point road or of underdog to Northwestern?
Pretty bad.
Yeah. I want to see how Utah bounces back after their loss last week. They got to go on the road at West Virginia. That's an interesting game that I'm going to have my eye on as well, Trevor. But, yeah, is Arizona State legit? They're 3-0. They got to go play at Iowa State. That's going to be another interesting game. So, dude, I'm telling you, there are so many good games this weekend. I cannot wait for college football this weekend. I really can't. It's going to be Kentucky at South Carolina. South Carolina's been, struggling a little bit so far. BYU at Colorado. Can Deion, right the ship a little bit and get a much needed upset win and or are they going to fall below 500 because they're 2-2 right now? You got to play BYU at home. So another interesting game. So that'll do it, Trev. I think that's all the games that we talked about. We could have talked about 10 more games. I find interesting about this weekend. It really is going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to get into conference play now. This is when college football season really starts to ramp up. We've gotten out of the way some of the exciting non-conference games. Now we start to get into the bulk of conference season and start to see who these teams are. But thankfully, Notre Dame kicks off against Arkansas at noon on ABC, so we don't have to wait too long to find out how that game pans out. But that'll do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. I'll be going live tonight on the CFB Nation podcast, so make sure you're subscribed there. We're going live for the spread option. And then I believe the guys are also going live at 5 p.m. for IB Nation Sports Beat. So a lot more content coming your guys' way. On your way out of here, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until next time, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. See you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.